Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hogwarts. My plants have billions of evil points. Chapter 71. Compared with the magical 9 3/4 platform, this steam train is too common. Common doors, common windows, common carpets, and even the driving core of the train is the most common steam engine, which needs to eat coal and breathe out smoke. Leonard looked at the layout of the train in the corridor, but found no trace of magic, and it was not transformed into a magic-driven train. This is a steam train, borrowed directly from the Muggles. It is estimated that it will be sent back to the Muggles for maintenance from time to time. There must be no traces of magic so as not to frighten the Muggles. However, those Muggle maintenance technicians may wonder why they don't seem to work much, but when they do it, it seems like repairing an extra train. There were not many people on the bus at this time. Leonard looked at his pocket watch and it was already 10:40, and the train would start in another 20 minutes. It seems that wizards have no sense of time. Leonard closed his pocket watch and began to think about which box he should sit in. Since he intends to lead Harry Potter to the right path, the best choice is naturally to share the same box with Harry Potter, and use his studious spirit to offset the negative influence brought by Ron Weasley. When doing anything, Leonard is quite serious. After all, the mentality of self-sacrifice is terrible. Leonard does not want a savior who has nothing to do to ask himself if he can't play wizard chess, messing up the box in front of him. If he could ask about the basic development of Gamp's transformation, or the selection and processing of potion ingredients, he would be able to answer with difficulty. But unfortunately, compared with Leonard who has a very sense of time, both Ron Weasley and Harry Potter are slightly lacking in this aspect. Maybe it has something to do with the Weasley family. This family is the same as Ron Weasley, or Ron Weasley is a child of this family. Quote, warm, kind, hospitable, with a sense of justice, a true Gryffindor family. But they are forgetful and have no sense of time. It is almost impossible to see them not being late when the school starts. If you want to share the same room with them, you can only wait. If you can't wait, the best thing is to find Hermione J, who is a bit petty and shows off the knowledge she has learned. Going to find Harry Potter, the savior, by myself is a bit of a downer, and it feels weird, but if you follow Hermione Granger, you'll be fine. As long as you follow her, you can meet Gryffindor swordsman Neville Longbottom under the guidance of the helpful Hermione Granger, and meet the savior Harry Potter naturally when looking for Neville's toad. The premise is to meet Hermione Granger. But it's a bit bland if you just get to know each other. Leonard casually walked through the corridor, his eyes swept over the transparent glass doors of each box. Soon, he found his target. Hermione Granger, that little girl with luxuriant and neglected hair. At this time, she was reading a book, a heavy book called Hogwarts, A History of the School. Leonard knocked on the door politely to remind the little girl sitting inside, and smiled politely after she looked up. Hi, may I sit here? Of course. Hermione Granger looked at Leonard's face with a thoughtful expression. Did we meet somewhere? That's right, in Ollivander's wand shop, when you were going to buy a wand. Leonard nodded and admitted. It's really you. Hermione Granger's eyes widened. I heard Mr. Ollivander talk about you. He said that you are also a Muggle wizard, and you are also very talented, and you are his helper. So under what circumstances did Mr. Ollivander talk about himself? Leonard froze for a moment, then smiled and said, Mr. Ollivander has helped me a lot, but I didn't expect you to have an impression of me. After all, we only met once. I think your wand is very special, so I will remember you. By the way, my name is Hermione Granger. How about you? Leonard Wilhelm. Then I'll call you Leonard. By the way, how many spells have you learned? I've already learned all the spells on the elementary standard spells. Hermione Granger said proudly. The expression on her face clearly said come and praise me. It can be seen that Hermione Granger lives in a loving family, and her parents will praise her every achievement without hesitation. This is fine, but for the talented Hermione Granger, it is easy to get staged achievements, and too much praise has formed a habit for her, that is, getting achievements equals getting compliments. It's just that this habit is only suitable for expressing in front of parents and other elders. For peers, this kind of showing off is a bit of a slap in the face, especially in the stage of youth that pays most attention to face. In layman's terms, Hermione's way of showing off is a bit hard, her emotional intelligence is not high, and she is easy to be annoying. If Hermione's achievements are simple, it's fine. Showing off failures in front of her peers and occasionally losing face and making jokes can improve friendship. But Hermione Granger is indeed a genius. Few people can surpass her learning ability, which makes her knowledge go farther and farther than her peers, but it also makes her farther and farther away from her friends. Unless it is someone who is as talented as her and has a common topic to compete for and improve together, but Leonard feels that such people are rare in the 7th grade of Hogwarts. The character of Hermione Granger can be said that if it weren't for Harry Potter, the savior who has no bad intentions, she would probably gradually become autistic, less and less able to communicate with others, and eventually turn into a mental illness. This is a matter of course. As a Muggle wizard, as the process of learning magic deepens, she will have fewer and fewer common topics with her parents. If there is no friend in school, it will be a matter of time before she goes crazy. I don't know if wizards have potions for mental illness. So in the previous life, when Leonard watched the Harry Potter series of movies, he couldn't understand why it was Harry Potter who really redeemed Hermione Granger, so why did Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley get together? Is it because Harry Potter is a dog? Didn't like Hermione. From Leonard's point of view, Hermione in the real world is not as good looking as the movie version of Emma Watson. After all, this is a real world, not a false world shown under the camera. The people here are not the actors, but themselves. Hermione Granger's words made Leonard think a lot, but he didn't tell Hermione how disgusting she was when she interacted with people. The most taboo thing to get along with others is to talk lightly. Pointing out other people's mistakes when you first meet them is like someone poking your finger into your nostril to pick your nose is disgusting. However, Leonard felt that he could hint from the side to this little girl who showed off her knowledge like a peacock, and it is very important to get along with others in harmony. Are you talking about the textbook of the charms class? Then you are really good. You have learned so many spells without anyone teaching you, Leonard said, surprised. Hearing Leonard's praise, Hermione raised her head proudly. You don't have to be disappointed. Hermione was very proud, forced herself not to laugh too happily and said at the same time, as long as you read the book carefully, you can do it. By the way, how many spells have you learned? I learned everything from the book, Leonard said. Really? Then you're not bad, Hermione said in surprise. In addition to the books, I also asked Mr. Ollivander to teach me some magic, which can only be learned by senior students, such as the Disarming Curse, the Iron Armor Curse, and the Disillusionment Curse. Leonard smiled and watched Hermione suddenly change the face of color. Mr. Ollivander taught well, and I learned well. Spells for seniors. Hermione subconsciously bit her nails. Is it still possible to do this? Find other wizards to teach you magic, but how did you do it? Hermione felt that her talent was not bad. If someone taught her, she would be able to learn it too. But how do you let others teach you magic? They are not professors at the school. Of course, this requires some skills. For example, you must first make friends with others, and you can get help from others after you have a certain amount of friendship. Leonard said, it's not just about learning. In fact, sometimes it is very important to have one more person to help. Hermione frowned, and shifted her finger nervously. This touched her blind spot of knowledge. She hadn't read a book on how to make friends with people, and she was horrified to find that she didn't seem to know how to make friends with people. Tell others that you are great, let others worship yourself and make friends with yourself. Hermione was lost in thought. I feel a little embarrassed. Looking at the thoughtful Hermione Granger, Leonard silently withdrew his gaze and looked out the car window, just in time to see a family rushing in from the 9 3/4 entrance. All of this family has red hair. The leader, a middle-aged woman with a rich body, a kind appearance is urging the children to get on the bus with a loud voice, and beside her is a smaller red-haired girl and 4 red-haired girls' boy. One of the 4 boys seemed to be the oldest and behaved steadily, and the 2 with the same appearance looked extraordinarily lively, chasing and playing even when they were about to be late. The youngest boy looked timid and frightened, as if he was worried about something. And following behind this family is Harry Potter, the savior of the world. The Weasley family is finally here. The middle-aged woman is the mother of the Weasley family, Molly Weasley, and the little girl beside her is the future wife of Harry Potter in the original book, Ginny Weasley. In reality, she looks much more lovable than in the movie. She is a beauty at first glance, unlike the cute one in the movie when she was a child, but when she grows up, she has a square face that is even squarer than Superman. Several boys had already rushed onto the train, but Leonard knew who they were. Elderly as Percy Weasley, the Weasley oddball, a humorless but academically good top student with a penchant for power. The twins are the Weasley twins, George Weasley and Fred Weasley, a lawless duo with a penchant for trickery and working on joke props. And then there's the Ron Weasley. The family still didn't recognize the person who got into the car behind them as Harry Potter. After all, the Weasley family joined the Order of the Phoenix at a later stage, and they had never met Harry Potter's parents. Leonard glanced at his pocket watch, and it was 10:56, which can be said to be counted by pinch. But even if you miss the train, it's not a big deal. As long as you let the owl write a letter to explain the situation, you can take the next train to Hogwarts. Next year, according to the plot, Harry, who continues to hang out with Ron Weasley, will be tricked by the house elf for not catching the train in time because he missed the train. At 11 o'clock, the train departed on time, and with the rumbling sound, the train left platform 9 3/4. Leonard closed his pocket watch, looked out of the window, and soon saw the railway line extending from platform 9 of King's Cross Station. Rail. Leonard stared at the rails below the train for a while, and suddenly understood something. The track extending from platform 9 3/4 was carved out of two parallel tracks. A long, traceless extension spell opened up a space enough for trains to pass through the gap without any gaps. The untraceable extending charm can last much longer than the Muggle-repelling charm. A problem that bothered Leonard was solved, which made Leonard feel better and his mood improved. He glanced at Hermione Granger, who was still struggling, and asked in a comfortable mood, "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about how to make others willing to make friends with me," Hermione said without thinking. "Maybe I can give more help to let them recognize me." "The idea is very interesting. Although I am not very optimistic, you can try it," Leonard said with a smile. With the character of Hermione Granger, this method will only disgust normal people, because the way Hermione Granger shows off subconsciously will make people feel humiliated, but Leonard didn't point it out. It's still the same sentence: don't talk superficially when getting along with others. It is 100 times more useful to let her discover errors herself than to be pointed out by others. Of course, Hermione Granger's idea is not completely unacceptable. If it is that kind of cowardly person, there is still a certain chance, such as, "Hi, may I ask if you have seen my life?" A boy with a round face stood outside the box and asked timidly. Neville Longbottom, a teenager who grew up under the pull of his overly strong grandmother. Under normal circumstances, parents will have different influences on their children, but Neville Longbottom's parents were killed by Voldemort's Death Eaters shortly after he was born. Tortured to the point of mental breakdown, turned into a vegetative state. Lacking the teaching of his parents, what Neville Longbottom faced was his powerful grandmother. Old Mrs. Longbottom was very strong. When her son and daughter-in-law were both admitted to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Wounds for long-term treatment, she supported Longbottom with her old body. Family. This is an admirable old man, but her education can be said to be a mess. She blindly put the pressure on Neville Longbottom. Wu Wangjiaos told Neville Longbottom all the time, let him shoulder the glory of the Longbottom family. Quote, excessive pressure made Neville Longbottom more and more silent, and the grandmother who acted arbitrarily suppressed Neville Longbottom's own thoughts, turning him into an inarticulate child. Son. This makes him nervous easily, and once he gets nervous, he tends to forget something, resulting in the bad habit of forgetting things. It was purely forced out by his grandmother. If it wasn't for this child's heart being strong enough, he might also be a master who collapsed and went crazy early. Thinking of this, Leonard's expression became a little weird. Hermione Granger was one, Harry Potter was one, and Neville Longbottom in front of him was another. This continuous contact with problem children one after another, inexplicably feels that I will become a psychiatrist. Is it an illusion? Hermione Granger, who was about to find a chance to try the method of making friends that she had figured out, jumped up and scared Neville Longbottom. What are you looking for? Hermione asked, looking Neville in the eye. Neville became a little uneasy, mainly because the girl in front of her acted a little scary, which made Neville, who was used to being arranged, a little at a loss. Life, Neville stammered. What is left? My toad, it's gone. Toad, what are you keeping that for? It's not pretty or cute at all. Hermione asked suspiciously. It was given to me by my grandma. She said that toads are easy to raise and won't take too much time. Neville said hesitantly. Go, I'll help you find it. You can always find it by asking a few more people. Hermione grabbed Neville's sleeve and walked outside. Just as she walked out of the box, she suddenly turned her head. Leonard, are you going? Let me join in the fun too. Leonard stood up and followed behind the two. Time to see how the Savior chats with Ron Weasley, just for a while. Doesn't that wear down the Savior's self-motivation? If so, he immediately turned his head and walked away, as if he had never seen Harry Potter. 10 minutes ago, Harry Potter, who was still a little uncomfortable, was looking at the corridor of the train. Many cars were full of people, which made him a little distressed, but he quickly found an empty box, and there was only a red-haired boy who had met once. But Harry remembered that the boy had come with his family and seemed to be a nice guy to get along with, but why was he sitting here by himself? Out of curiosity, Harry knocked on the door of the box and asked, "Hello, are you free?" "Of course, it's only me." Ron Weasley raised his head and said happily. Harry walked into the carriage, and just as he sat down, he heard Ron Weasley, who was sitting across from him, exclaim, "My God, you are Harry Potter." Harry has long been used to being recognized by people at a glance. He subconsciously touched the lightning scar on his forehead a little. "I'm Ron Weasley." Ron held out his hand, and Harry shook hands awkwardly. After introducing himself, Ron began to introduce his pets. "This is Scabbers," said Ron, holding a large mouse. The moment he saw the rat, Harry remembered the rats he fed Hedwig these days, and said without thinking, "Is it used to feed the owl?" "But why do you bring the owl food with you?" "Feed, feed." Ron opened his mouth wide, dumbfounded, and the mouse in his arms screamed and burrowed into Ron's clothes. Ron reacted immediately, scrambling to catch the mouse that got into his clothes. "Come out, Scabbers, don't move around. Don't go down," Ron yelled in panic. Seeing this, Harry wanted to help, but when he saw the wagging mouse tail protruding from Ron's clothes, he felt all hairs go down. "Stand up. It's a little scary. The mouse got into the clothes or something." Harry shivered, and moved involuntarily towards the box door. Ron quickly grabbed the mouse named Scabbers, grabbed it by the tail and pulled it out of his clothes, yelling, "Bad Scabbers." Then Tan looked at Harry, whose face was a little pale, and said in an atmosphere, "You scared Scabbers. You must apologize to him." Apologize to the mouse. Harry suddenly felt that this seemingly easy-going person in front of him was a little unreasonable. Why is he apologizing to DBCH, an owl fodder? And a disgusting rat that gets into people's clothes? "No, I will never apologize," Harry said seriously. HMPH. Ron immediately turned his head away, making up his mind to ignore the man opposite him. Even if he is the famous Harry Potter. Harry felt slightly regretful when he saw this, and he suddenly felt that maybe he shouldn't talk to new people like this, but the self-esteem and stubbornness of the boy made him not want to apologize. So Harry simply took out the elementary standard spell and looked at it, out of sight, out of mind. "Oh my God, you actually work so hard, you never forget to read on the train." Seeing this, Ron said angrily. Harry, who was obsessed with textbooks, froze for a moment, looked up at the red-haired boy in front of him, and completely crossed this boy in his heart. Compared to the hard-working and talented Lou, the boy in front of him seemed unreasonable. Just at this moment, a girl poked her head in. It was Hermione Granger. When she first saw the two of them, she was stunned by the unpleasant atmosphere, but soon she came back to her senses and asked, "Excuse me, did you see a toad?" "No, who would see such a disgusting thing?" Ron said without hesitation when he was furious. Neville, who was following Hermione, turned pale, while Leonard, who was behind Neville, looked puzzled. Looking inside the box is very clean, there is no packaging bag, and the atmosphere is not very good. Strange, according to the plot, shouldn't Harry and Ron Weasley be talking happily while eating magical snacks at this time? What's the situation with this dignified atmosphere? Conflict. But I haven't done anything yet. The unexpected scene stunned Leonard. Harry quickly noticed Leonard following behind, and greeted him with a surprised expression. "Leonard, long time no see." Harry jumped up. "Where did you go before? I asked the bar owner, and he said you checked out." "Ah, some private matter." Seeing this, Leonard simply opened the door and walked in. "This is..." He looked over to Ron Weasley. Ron Weasley. Harry still remembered Ron's self-introduction. He wanted to introduce it in a normal tone, but when he thought of the mouse in Ron's arms, his expression became a little tense, and his pet Scabbers. After Harry finished speaking, he looked at Leonard. He felt that Leonard, who was feeding mice to owls, must understand his feelings. In fact, Leonard didn't understand it. Although he was puzzled by the reason why the wizard took the common mouse as a pet, the mouse was also an experimental product in his hands, and the experimental product was not disgusting. But it's a different matter for Banban's words. Leonard glanced at the mouse curled up on top of Ron, thinking that it was a greasy, middle-aged fat man who hadn't showered in more than 10 years, and would eat and live with Ron Weasley for at least 3 years, making his stomach a little queasy. No. It's so disgusting, I really want to put biting kale to kill it. Leonard looked at the mouse with increasingly dangerous eyes. It's my pet. He deserves respect. Ron Weasley yelled. He's right, the admission notice does say that you can bring owls, mice or toads as pets. Hermione said, but. She changed the subject and said coldly, I think if you don't know how to respect other people's pets, then others will naturally not respect your pets. She was complaining to Neville, but she still remembered what Ron blurted out. Neville behind him showed a grateful expression, while Harry's expression was a little stiff. After all, he really didn't respect Ron Weasley's pet. But it's not his fault. That mouse actually burrowed into other people's clothes. It was terrible. HMPH, you are all in the same group. Ron Weasley stood up angrily, took his pet Banban and left the box without looking back. Seeing the back of Ron Weasley leaving, Hermione curled her lips, and turned her head to find Leonard staring at Ron Weasley's back, looking thoughtful. Leonard, do you think I've gone too far? Hermione asked. Leonard shook his head. Then what are you staring at him for? Hermione asked curiously. I just thought that mouse was fat. Leonard paused. It's good for an owl. Ron Weasley, who was supposed to be one of the protagonists, somehow became an episode. This was an accident. Leonard never expected that the two would have a conflict over a mouse problem, and he could only say that Harry, the savior, was too sincere. This is Hermione Granger, and this is Neville Longbottom. Leonard introduced the two to Harry, paused, and then said to Hermione and Neville, this is Harry Potter, I think you should know. Harry Potter. Hermione's eyes lit up. It's an honor to meet you. She walked in front of Harry, offered to shake Harry's hand. I heard about you, you defeated Voldemort. Leonard's eyelids twitched, and Neville's face turned pale. Mentioning Voldemort's name directly was a taboo for wizards, but Hermione, who was born into a Muggle family, took it lightly. This is a bad habit. Leonard suspected that Harry Potter kept mentioning Voldemort's name later on. Besides the rebellion of the young people, there was also Hermione's example. But this habit has nothing to do with Leonard. It's good to think about it more. Just let Voldemort stare at them and don't pay attention to himself. After a while of pleasantries, Hermione showed Harry Potter her restoration charm. Although she didn't say anything, Harry Potter was a little displeased with Hermione's tone and attitude. Isn't it just a restoration spell? He can do it too, but his glasses are very troublesome to repair, and he can't see clearly after taking them off, and he can't even use magic smoothly. Anyway, let's continue looking for Toad. Hermione stood up and said, Neville is in a hurry. Harry, do you want to come together? Harry looked at Leonard, nodded and I'll come too. Quote. Neville looked at the three of them anxiously. Suddenly there were so many people helping him, which made him feel a little uneasy, but he was still very happy in his heart. But Leonard, who had already met Harry Potter and witnessed his conflict with Ron Weasley, no longer planned to run away with them. I've got a great idea. Hermione, have you heard of the coming charm? Leonard asked. Hermione shook her head suspiciously. All her knowledge came from textbooks and some books that didn't involve spells, and the flying curse was a magic that was only taught in the 4th grade. Of course she had never heard of it. It's a magic that can summon a certain object. I suggest asking a senior or senior sister to help. Leonard sat in the box and said lazily. Why didn't you say it sooner? Hermione felt like she was being stupid for asking all the way. Just remembered. Leonard thought for a while and said directly. Well, it would be a lot easier if you could. Hermione muttered, leading Neville to find the senior, while Harry sat down with a smile and planned to share what he had learned with Leonard. Leonard raised his head and looked at Harry with an ancient hippie smile. Shut up and read. Quote. Oh, although the tone was not harsh, Harry felt that he had to be obedient. It's really enviable. I feel that Leonard is both talented and imposing. If I have half of his aura, I won't be afraid of the Dursleys, right? Harry lowered his head enviously, reading the book obediently. Opposite Leonard, accidentally brought out the way of talking to the werewolf wizard. Never mind, read a book. Leonard looked down at the catalogue of dangerous and magical plants, bought by Tom Edgard. One of the plants mentioned in Leonard was very interested. Poisonous tentacles, a dangerous plant with the characteristic of being alive, will actively capture the surrounding prey. It secretes venom. In addition to capturing the tentacles with paralyzing toxins at the tip of the prey, there are also compound leaves with spikes like a mouthful of fangs hidden in the young leaves. The poison on the compound leaf is deadly and highly poisonous. Once bitten, it will undoubtedly kill you, and there is no time to take the antidote. This is the most aggressive magical plant among the magical plants that Leonard has seen. It captures and kills a dragon and buries it on the spot. This makes Leonard look forward to what the strengthened poisonous tentacles will look like. There is a kind of poisonous tentacles in the greenhouse of Hogwarts. When Harry Potter was in 6th grade, Potions Professor Horace Slughorn went to the greenhouse to steal the leaves of poisonous tentacles. One blade of that thing is worth 10 galleons. Although the leaves can be sold, the seeds of the poisonous tentacles belong to the Category C prohibited items for sale, and they must not be available through ordinary channels, but the werewolf wizard must have a way. Before Leonard left Nocturne Alley, Midgard had already led his subordinates to encroach on some industries in Nocturne Alley. The prohibited items are the bulk of them. It is estimated that Leonard will receive something like poisonous tentacle seeds before Christmas. Looking at the picture of the poisonous tentacles in the book, Leonard began to be distracted, thinking about how to start his own botanical garden when he arrived at Hogwarts. The silence in the carriage lasted until night fell. Hermione and Neville never came back, and Harry watched Leonard read a book without speaking and dared not speak. In this way, until the train slowed down and slowly entered a dilapidated station. "Leonard, we're here," Harry said, uneasy, looking at the dim and dilapidated station outside the window. "Oh, let's go then." Leonard stood up, packed his books and walked out of the train along with the crowd. As soon as they got off the train, the old students of Hogwarts gathered together and walked towards the outside of the station, leaving a group of freshmen looking at the old station at a loss. At this time, a big man staggered over, holding a kerosene lamp, and said roughly, "Freshmen, look this way, follow me." "It's Hagrid," Harry whispered, lowering his voice. "Don't you remember Leonard, the guy who took me to the Leaky Cauldron? Remember, it's impressive." Leonard nodded, and followed the team in the direction Hagrid's kerosene lamp pointed. The next step should be the tradition of Hogwarts. Freshmen experience the path traveled by the founder of Hogwarts and head to Hogwarts Castle by water. Looking at the mysterious castle brightly lit under the moon in the distance, Leonard focused on the compass in his mind. The needle on the compass is impartial, pointing to Hogwarts. That's where the second relic is located. It really is Hogwarts, Leonard murmured to himself silently, his eyes full of curiosity. How did Hogwarts Castle, which is a Slytherin's secret room underground and a relic of ancient magic, stand there for hundreds of years? The enchanted boat carried the incoming freshmen to Hogwarts, South Pier. After arriving here, Hagrid with the kerosene lamp disappeared, but there is only one road that winds up to the castle, so don't worry about getting lost. The children were excitedly discussing the mystery and magnificence of the castle, and Harry, who looked up at the castle, felt it and wanted to find someone to share his inner joy with. However, when he turned his head, he saw Leonard, who was out of tune with the people around him, looking towards the forest to the west. "You can only see a corner of the forest here, and I don't know what to see." Leonard naturally focuses on things that are closely related to him. The Forbidden Forest is really fascinating. Leonard even had the urge to abandon the sorting ceremony and run to the Forbidden Forest to farm. "Calm down, wait until tomorrow when you have time to." 410. Leonard just thought of this before falling silent. "Wait, what day is it today? It seems to be Sunday. School starts tomorrow, Monday. Do you want to go to the Forbidden Forest in a week?" Leonard's face twitched, and his mood suddenly turned bad. "No, it's a big deal to start with a night tour tonight. First go to the Forbidden Forest and choose a good location." The freshman team soon arrived in front of the Hogwarts auditorium, and when the students were about to walk up the stairs to the auditorium, someone blocked in front of the crowd. I heard that a great person has come among us. A boy with light gold hair and two boys, one fat and one thin, stood on the steps and looked down at the freshmen. Harry Potter. The light blonde boy looked haughty. People of noble blood should associate with people of noble blood, and I, Draco Malfoy, are your worthy friends. He pointed to Harry Potter in the crowd with a smug look on his face. He also enjoyed the surprised eyes of the freshmen. Hermione in the crowd was lost in thought when she saw this. Does this count as making friends? It feels weird, but it feels good. But the probability of success of this method should not be very high. Is it a matter of attitude? Hermione thought of the times when she'd helped Neville in the car and then tried to help the others. Except for Neville Longbottom, who showed a certain amount of gratitude at the beginning, everyone else looked very strange. Although they didn't express it directly, they were all unhappy. Thinking about it now, my expression at that time was probably the same as this boy's, arrogant and annoying. Hermione was thinking, and Harry in the crowd considered how to respond to the man in front of him under the eyes of the freshmen. While it was nice to be told of high blood or something, Harry remembered that Leonard seemed to be of Muggle birth. He doesn't have any noble blood, but he is very powerful. Sorry, Draco Malfoy, Harry said earnestly, I will choose my own friends. I will judge a person by whether he is excellent, not by whether his blood is noble or not. Unfortunately, the current you didn't let me see to look worth making friends with. Lore. This sentence instantly turned Draco Malfoy's face into a pig's liver color. He walked up to Harry angrily, his eyes dangerous. You mean I'm not excellent enough? Draco Malfoy questioned. I'm a noble Malfoy. Everyone in our family is a genius, because nobility runs in our blood. These words sounded very imposing, but upon hearing this, Harry couldn't help but look at Leonard. Bloodline determines talent, but according to Mr. Hagrid and Mr. Ollivander, he is a pure blood wizard, and Leonard is a Muggle wizard. But my talent is completely inferior to Leonard. This is a liar who has done nothing but use the name of the family to show off and cheat. Blood has nothing to do with talent, Harry said seriously. Irrelevant. Draco Malfoy's mouth twitched, and she looked aggressively at Leonard, who was beside Harry with a gloomy face. At this time, Leonard was still annoyed because he couldn't sleep well tonight and wanted to go out for a night trip, so his expression was naturally not very good. This should be the person you think is talented. I guess, he can't be a mudblood, right? Ha ha ha. Draco Malfoy laughed wildly, even the two followers behind him laughed. That harsh laugh caught Leonard's attention. Leonard raised his head, and stared at Draco Malfoy with cold eyes, his knife-like eyes almost stabbed the laughing Draco Malfoy. You lowly mudblood, how dare you look at me like that? Draco Malfoy became furious, and the servant behind him even rolled up his sleeves to vent his anger on his master. Shut up. Leonard's indifferent voice seemed to be filled with icy scum, and a chill slid across Draco Malfoy's body like a poisonous snake. This look, so scary. I seem to have seen it somewhere. Draco Malfoy recalled her father, and recalled the sullen wizard who occasionally came to their house to ask for money. My father said that they were dark wizards, they used to be subordinates of the mysterious man, and each of them was a Death Eater who had killed many people. The eyes of this mudblood are just like those people. The kind who don't treat living people as human beings, as if everyone is their prey. That's the look in the eyes of the prey. Draco Malfoy couldn't help taking a step back, which woke him up instantly. He looked at Leonard in surprise, lowered his head and looked at his trembling legs with an ugly face. He's scared of a mudblood. Embarrassed, resentful, and fear mixed, Draco Malfoy wanted to scold back, and use words to let this fool know what noble blood is. But he didn't dare, he was afraid that this cold-eyed mudblood would kill him. Thinking of this, Draco Malfoy actually felt aggrieved, and tears welled up. New students. Wow, that's amazing, that arrogant-looking guy actually cried in fright at someone's words. Leonard. Harry glanced sideways. Good, so awesome, Leonard made this arrogant guy cry with a single sentence, so handsome, I really want to learn this kind of momentum. Better be able to make Dudley cry with one word. At this time, the crying of Draco Malfoy attracted the vice principal, Zeleva McGonagall, who was waiting at the entrance of the auditorium. She walked down the stairs quickly and came to the freshman. What happened? Professor McGonagall asked seriously. This is just the beginning of school, could it be that bullying happened to students? She, the unselfish Minerva, would not allow this to happen. Who can tell me what happened? Professor McGonagall's serious eyes swept over the students. The culprit, Leonard, was silent. How do you say that? Said that he accidentally exposed a little breath and scared Della Camalfort to tears. As a scavenger in his previous life, Leonard had a lot of blood on his hands, and he really had a murderous look on his body. Although Leonard has only killed one person in this life, he still did it by biting kale, but he knows what kind of murderous eyes look like. Just now because I was in a bad mood, I was a little annoyed, and another guy was making noise in front of me and making rude remarks. Of course Leonard would not give him a good face. It seems a bit too strange to say something like a look that scared the other person to tears. Professor. At this moment Harry raised his hand. It was this Malfoy classmate who stopped us suddenly, and then said a bunch of strange things, and he also insulted the classmates around me, calling him a mudblood. Harry also had a bad stomach, although he didn't understand what a mudblood was, and he didn't respond to the word, but he could see some people's reaction when Della Camalfort said it. That kind of reaction was surprise, and disbelief, and it was not only not a good word at first sight. Reporting this to the professor would be no problem. What did you say? Professor McGonagall's face changed color. Are you sure he said that word? Yes, Professor. Harry glanced at the students around him, and I thought the others should be able to testify. Yes, Professor. Hermione in the crowd raised her hand. I heard you. Me too. Neville hesitated for a long time, and raised his hand upright under the encouragement of Hermione. Then I probably understand. Professor McGonagall nodded, thinking that he understood the cause and effect, but suddenly got stuck. No, the crying student scolded others for being a mudblood. Why did he cry himself? Professor McGonagall looked at Harry, his eyes lingering on the scar on his forehead, and asked seriously, aren't you hiding something? No, Harry said frankly. Then why was he the one crying? McGonagall asked, pointing at a sobbing Malfoy. Maybe she was scared to cry. Harry was a little unsure. Leonard just gave him a look and told him to shut up. That's it, Professor McGonagall questioned. Professor like this, maybe he. Leonard said, looking at the sobbing Malfoy, it's too delicate. Too squeamish, huh? Those words pierced Della Camalfo's heart like an arrow. He had a premonition that his plan to show off at the beginning of school with the family advantage was shattered. And for a long time to come, labels such as crying and squeamish will hang on me. If that's the case, then forget it. Professor McGonagall raised his forehead. This is not an example. Students should get along with each other in harmony. She turned and walked up the steps. Come on, the sorting ceremony is about to begin. The students followed Professor McGonagall to the auditorium, and Della Camalfort, who had stopped in place, froze in place as if petrified. The students passing by him whispered to each other, and the whispering sound came into his ears. He said he was a Malfoy family. What a shame. I was so scared that I cried. So cute, ha ha ha. Those words stabbed Malfoy's chest like a pair of precise mending knives, and almost made him cry again. Delake, shall we go in? Gore, the number 1 follower beside him, asked cautiously. The second servant, Crabbe, glanced at the auditorium. It's okay to cry, but I'm a little hungry. Malfoy, whose eyes were full of shame and anger, looked at his stupid follower, gritted his teeth and growled, go. Useless trash. Didn't know how to help him just now. How could he have such a stupid follower? In the auditorium, 4 long tables were neatly arranged, and students wearing uniforms of different colleges sat together, looking expectantly at the freshmen who looked around with ignorant and curious eyes. Pure white candles floated in the air, illuminating the huge auditorium. Leonard raised his head, looked at the star-studded ceiling and the candles that had burned without dripping wax, and once again lamented the wonder of magic. Looking down, Leonard noticed the professor sitting on the professor's chair. Sitting in the middle is the greatest wizard ever, headmaster of Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore. At this time, his eyes fell on Harry in the crowd, and there was an unknown light in Blue's eyes, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Also worth noting is Quirinus Quirrell. At this moment, Quirrell's head was covered with a thick turban, and it seemed that he was already possessed by Voldemort. Suddenly Leonard noticed Chi Luolicki turned his head and pointed the back of his head at the students. Hiss! Harry on the side suddenly covered his forehead. Leonard looked over, then turned his head back quickly. What stupid operation! Voldemort possessed others to possess his IQ. At this time, you have to take a look at him to show your ability, right? Let Dumbledore notice your existence. No wonder the Wizard War will fail. Who the hell do you blame for your carelessness? Leonard noticed that Dumbledore's expression changed, and his eyes flicked around, but found nothing. Obviously, Dumbledore knew Voldemort was there, but he didn't know where he was. So why not doubt the suspicious defense against the dark arts professor? Anyway, accidents happen every year, and doubting will not kill you. Leonard rolled his eyes, feeling that both black and white were not so clear-headed. If it were Leonard, the 8 Harry Potter films would give you 2 episodes to finish filming. The sorting ceremony began amidst Leonard's complaints. Professor McGonagall began to take the roster and ask the students to put on the sorting hat in turn to determine which college they would spend the next 7 years in. Leonard looked at the worn-out pointed hat in front of the professor's chair, and pouted without expectation. It was obvious to him which college to go to. Leonard Wilhelm. Professor McGonagall called out Leonard's name. As a child with a surname starting with W, Leonard is already a student of the last few branches. He sat on the high chair under the gritted gaze of Malfoy, who had been sorted into Slytherin House, frowning as McGonagall put the talking hat on his head. An impolite brat. The sorting hat had just touched Leonard's head, and the folds at the tip of the hat formed a face of surprise. Do you think I'm dirty? With all due respect, you don't look like you take a shower often. Leonard held his breath, controlled his thoughts to prevent his memory from being peeped, and said casually. That's true, but this is also my specialty. The sorting hat twisted the tip of the hat. Okay, let's talk, let's see which school you should go to. Hufflepuff. Leonard interrupted the sorting hat before the sorting hat could finish. The sorting is for me to give you a score, not for you to choose. The sorting hat froze for a moment and felt a little unconfident. Leonard's voice was not loud, and others couldn't hear it, but the sorting hat's voice was quite loud. Both freshmen and veterans were stunned. He had never seen himself choose a college directly. If you choose your own college, it sounds great, and you can feel proud in the other 3 colleges. For a moment, all the students were focused, wanting to hear which lucky college this unique freshman would fall into. Hufflepuff, Leonard insisted. Can you tell me the reason? The sorting hat asked curiously. If your reason is suitable, it is not impossible to set a precedent for you. I heard that Hufflepuff is very close to the kitchen, so you can go to the kitchen whenever you want to have supper. Leonard said seriously. The sorting hat. Are you sure what you said is your true opinion? The sorting hat asked tentatively. What, is there a rule in Hogwarts that students can't eat supper? Leonard asked. That's not true, but this reason sounds a bit hasty. We usually choose colleges based on the characteristics of students. The sorting hat said. Leonard said indifferently, oh. Then tell me which academy I am suitable for. Wenkeluo or Gryffindor? Why don't you guess Slytherin? Can you stop joking? Leonard curled his lips. What's he doing, a squib offspring, feeling uncomfortable in Slytherin? Well, it seems that you are a little teacher who has a clear understanding of yourself. The sorting hat twisted its head and then as you wish. Hufflepuff. The long table of Hufflepuff Academy erupted into intense cheers and warm applause. Leonard gained the respect of everyone in Hufflepuff Academy with a simple answer before entering the academy. Professor McGonagall waved his wand, conjuring the black and yellow stripes of Hufflepuff and a house crest with a badger on Leonard's unmarked uniform. Welcome to Hufflepuff. On Leonard's way to the Hufflepuff long table, the male prefect of Hufflepuff at the front of the long table, I am Prefect Gabrielle Truman. If you have any questions or need help, you can come to me. Nice to meet you, Truman. Leonard shook hands with the friendly prefect and took a seat at the long table. Hi, my name is Justin Finlay, said the newborn boy sitting next to Leonard with a smile and greeting Leonard. Hi, my name is Leonard Wilhelm. Leonard responded politely. You were so handsome just now, just in front of the auditorium. Justin was a little excited. You beat that nasty Malfoy fiercely. Not defeated, I just refuted when he insulted me. Leonard said. That's amazing, You made him cry without doing anything. Justin said with a smile on his face. That man named Malfoy is really too much. I asked the prefect. You mudblood is a particularly insulting title, although I don't understand it well, but I'm still very angry. Okay, Finley, don't hold on to our hero, let us all get to know each other. Laughter came from across the long table, and a group of girls looked at this side and said with a smile. Hello, Wilhelm, my name is Susan Burns. Although I am also from a pure-blooded family, I have never felt that there is anything special about Muggle wizards. Everyone is a wizard, a round-faced girl said to Leonard said with a smile. Susan Burns. Leonard recalled the name, nodded to her, thank you for your approval. Hi, my name is Hannah Abbott, said a timid blonde girl with freckles and 2 braids. Hannah Abbott, a frequent guest of the fandom, does not necessarily have a role in the show but will definitely appear in the role. Who made her last name start with A? She was the first to go on stage at the sorting ceremony. You're so brave, I thought you'd be sorted into Gryffindor, she whispered. Gryffindor stands for bravery, but it doesn't mean that if you are not in Gryffindor, you are on the opposite side of bravery. Bravery is a good quality that even if you are not a Gryffindor, you should have it, but it should be in moderation. Leonard said, looking at the long table of Gryffindor, which is too much bravery can make reckless. Quote. Very well said. A tall boy said, hello, my name is Ernie Macmillan. Hello, I think I don't need to introduce myself, you already know me. Leonard said. Of course, you're handsome. Ernie gave a thumbs up. I can't understand that Malfoy either, he looks so ugly when he cries. It's just a crybaby, why mention him? Justin said. Yes, it's really disappointing not to mention him. A group of Hufflepuff freshmen established a basic friendship in this short chat. Ding ding ding. The crisp voice interrupted the students' enthusiasm for communication. They looked at the professor's seat, and saw Hogwarts headmaster Dumbledore holding a silver spoon in one hand and a goblet in the other, tap lightly. When all the students were quiet, Dumbledore cleared his throat and said, Welcome to Hogwarts, all freshmen, and welcome our senior students back here. Before your brains are overwhelmed by the food and the warm atmosphere, I want to mention a few things. Okay. Leonard looked at Dumbledore, listening to the old professor talk about the so-called precautions. I won't say anything about not entering or exiting the Forbidden Forest, but specifically mentioning not to enter the corridor on the right-hand side of the 3rd floor is a bit of a cover-up. And the strange threat of, don't want to suffer a painful death, is even more ridiculous. The students didn't believe that they would die in the safe Hogwarts, and in the eyes of the students, it was just a harmless warning. Also, don't get close to the Forbidden Forest. Anyway, Leonard just listened to it for fun. Then there is the most famous Dumbledore's shortest opening speech, fool, sneeze, scum, ring. Leonard doesn't like riddles, and he doesn't like riddles that don't make any sense. His only thought now is to quickly end this start of term dinner and then sneak to the Forbidden Forest at night. Of course, you can still look forward to the food at the banquet. The start of term banquet at Hogwarts was refreshing for Leonard. The refreshing detailed explanation here is that the ears and eyes seem to have been crushed and recast. The eyes are fine, mainly because Leonard did not expect that Hogwarts also has a bizarre tradition, that is, singing the school song. It seems to have been mentioned in the novel, but Leonard simply ignored it because it was not an important plot, and it was not mentioned in the movie at all. As long as there is a point to mark the degree of disaster of this link, Leonard will not feel this kind of collapse. The Hogwarts school song is a section of lyrics without music, and the part of singing the school song is to sing it freely with your own tune. A person who sings his own tune can bear it as long as it is not too unpleasant, but it is a nightmare for ascended people to sing in such a nonsensical way. When the singing started, Leonard suspected that something was wrong with his ears. When the singing gathered together to form a buzzing noise, Leonard began to doubt life. By the time the singing gradually stopped, Leonard had already fallen into a state of sluggishness. Where is this? What happened? What am I doing here? I think Leonard didn't do anything bad in his life, so listening to this song can be regarded as receiving merit in advance, right? Leonard propped his forehead with one hand and looked down at the ground in pain. The ancient buds in his sleeves came out dizzily, and the leaves on both sides were wilted. This was a singing that even the ancient sprouts couldn't bear, but looking at Dumbledore on the rostrum, he still had an expression of enjoyment. At first, Leonard thought that he was abnormal, but after looking at the indescribable expressions on the faces of other professors, Leonard understood, the one with the problem should be Dumbledore. It can only be said that Dumbledore, who is worthy of being called the greatest wizard, can endure what ordinary people can't. Fortunately, the singing is over, and the most tortuous part has passed smoothly, and the next step is the wonderful part of wanting to have dinner. The night at Hogwarts Castle looked a little gloomy. Leonard walked in the night, looking at the eerie portraits on both sides of the corridor of the castle because of the shadows. There was no wavering in his heart. He, Leonard, a freshman at Hufflepuff, went on a night tour on the first day of school. His roommates are the two boys he met at the banquet, Justin and Ernie. The two were very enthusiastic, and kept chatting with Leonard until very late. Leonard was also very patient. After saying good night to each other, he lay on the bed with his eyes open, and left the dormitory only after the sound of long breathing came from the two people's beds. After casting a powerful illusion spell on himself, Leonard quickly left the castle from the east courtyard and followed the path towards the Forbidden Forest. In fact, the Forbidden Forest does not refer to the forest around Hogwarts, but refers to the forest outside a certain range. There is also a forest around Hogwarts, but this is a safe area that is regularly cleaned up by Hogwarts professors, and some dangerous creatures will not come here. Naturally, these places are not among Leonard's choices. What Leonard needs are places that are inaccessible, preferably places that are so dangerous that no one dares to go. In other words, the deeper the Forbidden Forest, the better. Along the stone road, Leonard passed by the stone house that was still lit with candles. This is the residence of the gamekeeper Hagrid, and Hagrid is the enemy that Leonard needs to pay attention to the most. Hagrid comes in to inspect the Forbidden Forest. If Leonard's botanical garden is not good, he can easily find it. So after Leonard entered the Forbidden Forest, Leonard still needs to pay attention to Hagrid's activities. This shouldn't be difficult. Hagrid should take a fixed and safe route when visiting the Forbidden Forest. Long-term actions will leave very obvious traces. With Leonard's professionalism as a scavenger, it is easy to find such traces. Once you find it, just avoid it. Leonard passed by the stone house, and suddenly heard a dog barking from the stone house. "What's your name, Fang?" Hagrid's voice came from the stone house. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps and the sound of the door opening, and then Hagrid, who was more than 3 meters tall, came out of the stone house bent over. "Is anyone here?" Hagrid looked suspiciously at the empty space around him, and looked suspiciously at the hound at his feet. "Did you smell the wrong one, Fangya?" "Woo." The hound named Yaya let out an aggrieved whine. Leonard, who was standing not far away, glanced at the hound Fang with a gloomy look in his eyes. A hound with a very sensitive sense of smell, it feels very troublesome, or just find a chance to kill it. Yaya, who was looking for the source of the strange smell with his head down, suddenly felt cold, and an inexplicable sense of crisis made him restless. "Big, what's the matter with you? Are you sick?" Hagrid, noticing Fang's fight, bent down to comfort his partner. Yaya let out a shrill cry, as if seeing a natural enemy. "Yaya." Hagrid touched Yaya's head suspiciously, and suddenly he felt that he smelled a delicate fragrance. The scent is very comfortable, as if letting him lie on cotton. Hagrid yawned a lot, and suddenly found Fang at his feet also looking drowsy. "So you're sleepy." Hagrid touched Fangya's neck, picked it up and walked into the stone house. "Come on, let's go to bed." Watching the door of the stone house being closed DBCD, Leonard Jin, who was standing at the door of the cloth house, closed the bottle containing the secretion of bitter thorn. As expected of a hybrid titan, the drug resistance is really strong. Leonard looked at the half bottle of liquid that had evaporated and yawned. He held his breath and felt a little drowsy. Unexpectedly Hagrid sucked it all in and it was just sleepy. "Hagrid, Hound Fang, by then, we need to plant a lot of poisonous plants with obvious smells around, so that it should be able to prevent it from breaking in with Hagrid." Leonard put away the medicine. "Good one to the Forbidden Forest." Ahead is the Forbidden Forest. There are many dangers in the Forbidden Forest. He doesn't want to be attacked by some magical animals and lose his life. Although he has learned a lot of magic and mastered powerful ancient magic with the help of the ancient sprouts, he is still just a young wizard after all. Once in danger, he may lose his life at any time. It's another day to envy werewolves. If werewolves didn't have the curse of the full moon night, they would be the most perfect bloodline. As soon as he stepped into the forbidden forest, Leonard felt the breath of the forest. Looking at the dark forest, Leonard was silent for a while, and took out a few miniature pickle-like seeds from his pocket. These are the few seeds he has left of biting kale, but biting kale is not a particularly hard-to-buy plant, and there is a normal biting kale in Leonard's place, so there is no need to save these seeds. Or your own safety is more important. Leonard casually threw the gnawing kale seeds on the ground, and with the sound of the soil being pushed apart, several gnawing kale jumped out of the ground with sharp teeth. Then Leonard, surrounded by these biting kale, headed for the depths of the forest. It's still close to the edge of the forest, and it's not too dangerous. With the protection of biting kale, Leonard can look at the surrounding environment with confidence. Magical plants and magical animals are not very common. All the plants that are visible to the naked eye are common plants. The only difference is probably a kind of magical red mushroom. This mushroom has slender white stems that stare at round red canopies and grows in wetter places. The amazing thing about these mushrooms is that their canopy can jump. From time to time, Leonard could see a mushroom canopy abandoning its white pole, jumping around in the air and falling back down. This is the parachuting mushroom, introduced in 1,000 Magical Plants and Mushrooms, and it is one of the materials for making the invisibility potion. But what's the use of the invisibility potion? Isn't the illusion curse fragrant? What's more, there is also a powerful illusion curse. Moreover, mushrooms are not magical plants, so seeing this thing, Leonard's eyes were full of disgust. It is still important to find a place to grow magical plants. Leonard watched as he walked, his nerves gradually tightened as he got deeper into the forbidden forest. The danger here has already touched Leonard's vigilance. In the dark corner, there seemed to be a pair of invisible eyes staring at him. This feeling keeps Leonard on his toes. The biting cabbages that were originally scattered and jumping around were gathered around him by Leonard, so that they can deal with possible dangers at any time. Just when Leonard was thinking about what the danger in the darkness was, he suddenly felt his footstep on something. Leonard frowned and raised his feet, the tip of his wand glowing softly to illuminate his feet. It was a piece of white silk fabric. It seemed to be spider silk. Leonard suddenly realized, and suddenly heard the sound of soft footsteps coming from around him. A scarlet-red spot lit up in the darkness. Leonard was surrounded. In the Forbidden Forest there is a dangerous magical animal listed as XXXXX by the Ministry of Magic. Octopus. This is a huge creature with high magic resistance, high agility, and rapid reproduction. Its individual strength is average, and an adult wizard in common can easily deal with one, but in the wild, this animal can easily kill an adult wizard. Because they are good at sneak attacks, and often in groups, the wizards of common have almost no power to fight back when facing them, and they will be torn apart and devoured by them. Leonard has stepped into the territory of a group of Acromantula. This is a very normal thing. Acromantus reproduces quickly, so it has a large territory and is located deep in the Forbidden Forest. The place Leonard wanted to find easily coincided with the territory of the Acromantula. And breaking into the territory of the giant arachnid means facing a steady stream of attacks from the giant arachnid. Swish! Fragmentary sounds approached from all directions, and as the countless red dots gradually approached, the moonlight illuminated the bodies of these giant spiders. The 8 sharp-jointed limbs slid on the ground, dragging the huge black abdomen of the Acromantula. It was covered with gray needle-like manes all over its body. The fangs in the ferocious mouthparts were shiny black, and as the mouthparts squirmed, drops of venom dripped into the soil, turning the already withered and yellow weeds into scorched black. 8 scarlet eyes are distributed on the head, and they can see in every direction in all directions. At this time, the 4 eyes in the front are closely staring at Leonard and their prey. This is a terrifying creature that was born for hunting. At this time, dozens or even hundreds of Acromantula dominated Leonard, planning to turn this uninvited guest into their supper tonight. As for those jumping emerald green cabbages, they are just decorations on the dinner plate. These giant acromantids don't care about this kind of magical plant that doesn't have any meaty taste. They are not vegetarian anyway. Leonard looked at these ferocious monsters indifferently, and calmly stretched his hand into his pocket. His sudden movement alarmed the Acromantula surrounding it. An Acromantula behind Leonard let out an unpleasant roar, and its 8 limbs suddenly fell down like springs, bouncing itself up and attacking the back of Leonard's head. But faster than it is a cabbage. The biting cabbage moves faster than the acromantula, has a clearer target, and bites more fiercely. It bounced towards the acromantula, opened its huge mouth full of sharp teeth, and wrapped the acromantula's head inside. The acromantula also tried to pierce the biting cabbage with its venomous fangs, but before it could exert any force, the biting cabbage suddenly closed its sharp teeth. With a crackling sound, the headless body of the acromantula bounced up and fell to the ground. The 8-jointed limbs twitched and shrank inward, and stopped after a while. While the biting cabbage was crunching in its mouth, Purple's juice mixed with venom flowed from the cracks in its teeth. Obviously, compared with the full-time biting cabbage, the bite force of the acromantula is still a bit weaker. Biting kale is meat-eating too. And the biting cabbage, which is a magical plant, has a very high resistance to toxins. Leonard looked thoughtfully at the venom oozing from the mouth of the biting cabbage, and suddenly had an idea. The death of one acromanter sent the surrounding acromanters into a frenzy. Acromantis has extremely high intelligence, and there is a certain degree of emotion among the same kind. Although they will also eat the flesh and blood of their dead compatriots, they also have the concept of revenge. Noticing that the acromantids around had the intention of attacking, the biting cabbages surrounded Leonard and wrapped Leonard in a circle, ready to eat a bloody way for Leonard at any time. But Lonky is not interested in watching a few biting kale and a group of big spiders. Even if he can accept it mentally, time cannot accept it. The surrounding acromantulas couldn't hold back anymore, they jumped up and rushed towards Leonard. Leonard lowered his eyes slightly and a seed covered with thorns fell into the soil. The ground surged, and a verdant thorny thorn jumped out of the ground. The thorny thorn stabbed towards the giant 8-eyed spider that fell from the sky like a sword. Bitter thorns strengthened, impaling male. The thorns covered with deadly thorns seemed to have eyes, and while growing extremely fast, they precisely pierced the lower abdomen of every 8-eyed ear spider that fell. These acromantulas struggled painfully, and before they had even struggled twice, Purple's blood and White's silk sac flowed out from the place where they were stabbed. What flowed out together was the paralyzing venom that was no longer useful for eggs. The man who pierced hit the deadly position of the giant 8-eyed spider, and took the lives of these giant 8-eyed spiders almost at the same time as the piercing. There was no need for benevolent anesthesia at all. There were piercing sounds and painful roars, and after a while, an umbrella, covered with acromantulas, was woven on Leonard's head. And the rest of the giant arachnids that hadn't had time to jump didn't escape either, and the thorns that branched out from the main branch pierced and hung them. Finally, when the surrounding giant 8-eyed spiders were swept away, the thorns lost their color and turned into hard and firm dead branches. Leonard wandered among the withered thorns and looked at the hanging acromantulas, as if he saw a distorted statue full of postmodern style. The withered thorns are the base of this statue, and those giant 8-eyed spiders are the decorations on the base. Under the embellishment of the moonlight, the whole picture looks ferocious and full of a unique sense of beauty. Leonard took out a small glass bottle and began to inoculate these acromantulas with venom one by one. The venom of the giant acromantia is a good thing. It is a magic material with a quota, and the market price is 10 rons per pint. With so many acromantids, Leonard can keep some for his own use, and Midgard can help sell the rest. The market price was 100 galleons, but the price on the black market was not so cheap. The venom of these acromanter spiders alone could make Leonard go crazy. The 10 crystal medicine bottles that Leonard carried with him had all been filled, and Leonard shook his head and turned to leave when he saw that there was still a small-eyed spider hanging higher that hadn't taken the venom. If you can't fit it, you can't fit it. He can't keep it in his mouth, right? What's more, there is no shortage of acromantids here. Leonard can come here to hunt anytime he wants. If you pay 1 bitter thorn seed at a time, you can harvest a bunch of acromanter venom, blood earning. With this thought in mind, Leonard continued to move towards the east. This is already the site of the acromantidae, and he couldn't go deep to avoid encountering Hagrid's pet, Aragog. That guy can speak human language. If he reveals to Hagrid that he came to the Forbidden Forest, it will make Hagrid vigilant, and maybe he will strengthen his patrol. This would mess up Leonard's plans. So he decided to look in another direction. After walking for an unknown amount of time, the moon was already westward, and Leonard felt the soil under his feet getting wetter, and even the smell of damp and rot in the air became heavier and heavier. Leonard looked at the faint miasma in the air, covered his nose and slowed down his breathing. Is there a swamp in the Forbidden Forest? Or is there a swamp behind the Forbidden Forest? He came out of the Forbidden Forest. Leonard looked at the unknown depth of the quagmire in front of him, and felt that it was better not to move forward. There is a water source nearby, and the fertile land is still far from Hogwarts. It seems very good to set up the botanical garden here. However, Leonard prefers to set the botanical garden under the mountain wall, which is more hidden, but he is not satisfied after looking at several places. This seems to be more appropriate here. Leonard estimated the area of land he needed, and then took out the seeds of bitter thorns. He planned to plant a large number of piercing males around the location reserved. He didn't need the instantaneous burst damage of the piercing males, but used the thorns left after it withered to build a maze. People's vision will deceive themselves. When layers of thorns appear in front of them, it is easy to hide the only way. Seeds were thrown into the soil one by one, and under Leonard's guidance, the growth direction of the impaler was completely controlled by him. Soon Leonard was able to see the botanical garden's maximum line of sight covered with withered bitter thorns, leaving only a path for one person to pass. In this way, the peripheral defense of the botanical garden is completed. After that, Leonard vacated the outer land in the botanical garden, and planned to pull 2 paper strips of whomping willow to insert here, and planted bitter thorns in the inner circle. Bitter thorns are the seeds that Leonard can use the most, and the defense of the botanical garden can only be entrusted to it. This time he chose the enhancement that made the bitter thorns active. A total of 12 bitter thorns and seeds were initially strengthened, and the root system was strengthened before being planted. When these 12 bitter thorns grow, Leonard's botanical garden will have 12 more loyal guards. The initial defense has been completed, and the next step is to plant magical plants that are used for reproduction and produce seeds. After Leonard planned the scope, he planted different seeds in different areas. There are only 3 gnawing cabbage seeds left, and a dozen bitter thorn seeds. In addition to these, Leonard also has a few seeds produced by the fruit of aconitum, and he also found a place to plant them. Such a botanical garden with sustainable output has been built. At the same time, the system that had been silent for a long time finally spoke out. Novice Task 4. A safe botanical garden has been completed. You have gained 300 experience points, 5 enhancement points. Your level has increased. The current senior plant apprentice 191 700ths. You have gained 1 strengthening point, and you have gained a new talent, the Magical Plant Radar. Magic Plant Radar, active talent. After opening, you can get the location of magical plants within a certain range. The troublesome novice task is completed. Leonard breathed a sigh of relief, and clicked on the system's enhancement page. The enhancement page still only lights up the root system enhancement of the growth system and several enhancements of the combat system. Leonard directly scrolls to the combat system, and lights up the pre-enhancement of Magic Seed Bag. The branch that increases attack power, shield injury increase, can generate additional damage to protection methods. Split, which also belongs to the branch of increasing attack power, can produce 3 times the plants when planting temporary combat plants. For example, planting a seed can produce 3 magical plants for temporary fighting. However, after lighting up these 2 reinforcement branches, Leonard found that the magical seed bag did not become a lightable state. After a closer look, he found that the requirement is that at least 7 reinforcements must be lit in the front reinforcement. Leonard still has 4 reinforcement points in his hand. He glanced at the 2 reinforcement effects of the defense branch, and simply lit them all up. Defense branch magic power devouring. Every plant has the ability to completely devour magic power once, that is to say, get an absolute magic immunity. The defense branch magic power rampage. After devouring the magic power, the plant will enter the rampant state and increase various attributes until the devoured magic power is exhausted. These 2 enhancements are very interesting. They are actually enhancements with a linkage effect, and they are stronger when they are strong. When encountering the magic released by a powerful wizard, after fully absorbing it, you can get a very long-lasting and powerful rampage enhancement. It's a pity that this ability doesn't matter at all. After lighting up these 2 enhancements, Leonard smoothly lit up the Magic Seed Bag enhancement. After strengthening the lighting, Leonard seemed to see a strange space slowly forming in his hand. It can't be seen or touched, but Leonard can feel its presence. The magical seed bag has been opened, and the botanical garden is not currently bound. Whether to specify the botanical garden to bind its seed output to the magical seed bag. I. Confirm the binding. The binding is successful. The magical seed bag will automatically collect the seeds and fruits produced by the plants, and keep them fresh. And freshness preservation. Leonard raised his eyebrows, and threw the remaining bitter thorn seeds into the seed bag. Suddenly, a vortex appeared beside Leonard's hand, completely devouring the bitter thorn seeds in Leonard's hand, and then the vortex disappeared. And Leonard can take the seeds in the seed bag anytime and anywhere without any delay, which is more convenient than putting it on the body. It can only be said that it is worthy of strengthening the combat system. Even an ability that seems to be biased towards logistics can add a lot of help in the battle. There is still a little strengthening point. Should I focus on another system or continue to fight? Leonard opened the system page and took a look. Don't think about the logistics department for now, although it can increase the medicinal effect of even plants, but Leonard rarely needs two powerful magical plants, just the enhanced medicinal effect of common is enough for him. The improvement of Wolfbane potion has little to do with its efficacy. According to Damocles, if you want to completely solve the curse of the werewolf, the most important thing is magic, and the potion is only auxiliary. And the logistical intensification shortens the lifespan of the plants, which goes against Leonard's desire to harvest more batches of seeds. Moreover, the fruit effect will not enhance the strength of the plant after the seed is planted, so Leonard will not consider it for the time being. As for the growth system, Leonard took a look at the enhancement skill tree of the growth system. The next enhancement is called Magic Boost, which can feed plants with magic power to promote their growth. It is a very practical ability, which makes people look forward to its effect. However, the strengthening of the combat system is even more attractive. It is still the node after the strengthening of the two branches, and the name of that node is Capability Sharing. Instead of giving Leonard the ability to use plants, let these plants get Leonard's magic. Although Leonard can't light up this strengthening node yet, he can read the system introduction first. According to the system's introduction to this strengthening node, this strengthening can allow the strengthened plant to obtain a Leonard's magic, and can use it 3 times. There is no limit, both offensive jinxes and auxiliary magic can be used, and it is entirely up to Leonard to choose. Although there is only one, and it can only be used 3 times, it is also a very terrible Tiwong. Who would guard against the magic of a plant? Even a magic plant. So Leonard intends to focus his points on strengthening the combat system first. The reinforcement behind the magical seed bag is still divided into offensive branch and defensive branch. The enhancement that can be lit on the offensive branch is magic storage. This enhancement is similar to the magic power devour of the defensive branch, and it is also actively devouring magic. It's a bit repetitive, but after seeing the next offensive branch reinforcement, Leonard understands that this is also a pre-reinforcement. The next enhancement of the offensive branch is called Self-Explosion. After the completion of magic storage, a powerful self-explosion will be launched before being destroyed. Something like biting cabbage will explode close to the face, while that is rooted in the soil will choose a direction to blast its branches in a direction and shoot them at the enemy. It's brutal, which Leonard loves. Leonard lights up magic storage so that every plant that Leonard strengthens has the ability to ignore 2 magics. It's an interesting number, because when a wizard finds out that his target can ignore his own magic twice in a row, the basic mentality breaks down. In addition to magic power rampage, once the magic is cast, the plants will run away directly. I am afraid that few people can have the courage to use the 3rd magic. Even if someone has the guts to cast more magic on Leonard's plants, after turning on the self-explosion of the offensive branch, the first magic is immune to rampage, the second magic is immune again, and the second magic is immune. 3 rounds exploded directly, sending the victim away. Intimate one-stop service. If cremation is added, then the magical plant has buried a dragon. Leonard glanced at the magical plant seeds buried in the soil. The use of the strengthening node, Devour, should be put on the agenda, and there is also the use of the botanical garden, just these plants are too easy. Coincidentally, as soon as Leonard had such an idea in his mind, the system showed up in time. Long-term mission. Prosperous botanical garden. You have already obtained your own botanical garden, but it is still too barren. Plant more plants to get rewards. Current types of magical plants. 3/5. Every time a brand new magical plant is planted, you will get 20 extra experience points, and you will get a little strengthening point after reaching a certain number. Closing square bracket. Long-term mission. Dangerous plants. Simple strengthening can no longer satisfy your evil tastes. You need more powerful magical plants. Cultivate magical plants with different effects through swallowing, and each magical plant with different effects will reward 30 additional experience points. Closing square bracket. It seems that the novice missions with generous rewards are over. The 2 extra long-term missions are rewarding experience points. The previous mission is not bad. There is also a mechanism similar to achievement rewards, which can obtain additional strengthening points. Leonard happened to have a magical animal material on hand right now. The venom of the Acromantia. Leonard walked over to where the biting kale was growing, thought for a moment, opened a bottle, and dropped a drop on one of the seeds. Engulfment was turned on, and the venom of the giant spider successfully integrated into the seeds, dyeing the original purple seeds into black. Produced by the system, there is no concept of failure at all. Once the devourer is opened, even the most poisonous thing will be swallowed by you. And the result is that when a biting cabbage grows, Leonard can harvest a biting cabbage seed that can continuously produce acromanter venom. Take a bite, it doesn't matter whether the bite hits the vital point, the throat will be sealed with blood. You can ask Midgard to send some magical animal materials. After finishing all this, Leonard touched his chin. Of course, no money is required. Although it was agreed at the beginning that Leonard would sell the materials of that suitcase to Midgard, and buy them back at market prices when needed. But what was the relationship between them at that time? The encounter between knowledge happened to be a relationship of mutual help and mutual assistance. Now they are the ironclads who robbed the bank together, not to mention that under Leonard's suggestion, the strength of the werewolf wizard is constantly increasing. Who cares about such a small amount of money? After dealing with the matter of the botanical garden, Leonard finally settled his worries. He took away all the biting cabbage he brought, and walked towards Hogwarts with ease. He didn't plan to keep these biting cabbage as botanical garden bodyguards. Although they are alive and kicking, they are all grown by super speed growth. The lifespan is only 10 days or less. It's useless to stay here, it's better to protect Leonard and go back to school. Who knows what else will come across on the road. Leonard doesn't intend to pass through the Acromantula's territory, he intends to go straight back to Hogwarts through the Forbidden Forest. One of the 5 biting kale completely withered due to the venom of the Acromantula. The remaining 4 biting kale surrounded Leonard and left through the path surrounded by thorns. Fortunately, there was no danger along the way. Leonard almost strayed into the territory of a mountain troll on the way. Fortunately, the stench from the troll was terrible enough for Leonard to avoid it in time. He didn't want to fight with the troll. It wasn't that he couldn't fight, but he felt that he was at a disadvantage no matter how he thought about it. There is nothing to gain if you win the battle. The giant monster has no special abilities except for its larger size. Leonard dislikes it and does not want to use it as a material to strengthen plants. Moreover, the troll stinks all over, let alone hitting Leonard. He would feel like throwing up just looking at it. No idea how Harry Potter managed to hold back the stench and jump on top of the troll and poke its nostrils with his wand. Can I still have that wand? After leaving the Forbidden Forest, the lights in Hagrid's hut had already been turned off. It was already late at night, and the professors who watched the night at Hogwarts probably went back to sleep. Leonard yawned, cast the disillusionment charm on himself, and overgrow the biting cabbage next to him one by one, then picked up the malnourished seeds they left behind, and walked along the stone road towards Hogwarts. Originally, Leonard wanted to try the newly acquired magical plant radar, but he was already very tired tonight, so he should go to bed quickly, and had class tomorrow. The time at Hogwarts is still long, and he has enough time to try his talent. Chapter 81. Every time how difficult it is before getting up. I want to give a big comparison to my arrogant self before going to bed. Justin, who had just slept for 3 hours, was shaken awake by Justin. He opened his eyes and looked blankly at Justin, who was already fully dressed. Get up, Leonard, we have a whole day of classes today. Justin urged. The first class is Herbal Medicine by Professor Sprouter, that's our dean, don't be late. Quote. Okay, I'll get up now. Leonard rubbed his face, got up from the bed, and went into the bathroom to wash. About 5 minutes later, a refreshed Leonard rushed out of the bathroom. Come on, let's go to class. The two walked towards the Hogwarts greenhouse, because the greenhouse was located in the southeast of the castle, so there was no need to walk up the movable stairs, and Leonard, who had walked half a circle around the castle at night, had already memorized the direction of the greenhouse. It turned out they were still late. Leonard scowled, rubbed his stiff face and sighed. I was late for class on the first day, and I was still facing my own yard. Thinking about it, I felt that the road ahead was bleak. Looking at the floor, why is there a situation where there are stairs on one side and no stairs on the other side? Why is there a staircase bug that can go straight to a certain building without going down the middle? I thought Hogwarts had only one movable staircase as a pit, but I didn't expect that the entire Hogwarts castle was a pit, a huge pit. Sorry Justin, I made you late, Leonard said to Justin with a sigh. It's okay, actually I got up late too. Justin and Leonard walked to the door of the greenhouse and were about to knock on the door when they suddenly heard hurried footsteps behind them. The two looked back and saw the big Ernie running fast with a piece of pie in his mouth. Whoa. Good morning, both of you, Ernie greeted happily. Ernie, didn't you get up early? Justin looked surprised. Are you going to have breakfast? Yeah, I'm still used to eating something in the morning, otherwise I always feel like I haven't woken up. Ernie said heartily, Here is the meat pie I brought you. This pie is delicious. But we're all late. Justin reluctantly took the pie and handed it to Leonard. At this time, it seems a little bad to enter the classroom with a pie. Justin hesitated, glanced at Ernie and then at Leonard, making up his mind. Go in when you're full. So the three of them stood at the door of the greenhouse and ate the pie happily. The morning breeze brought the fresh air in the forest. Leonard gnawed on the pie, and suddenly felt that it was really good to come to Hufflepuff. At least everyone likes to eat delicious food. It is really a pleasure to eat pies in such a comfortable environment and watch other late students rushing over. That's right, it wasn't just Leonard and his roommates who were late, but also other students from Hufflepuff and Lowen-Keluo's students. Unfortunately, it was Monday just after school started today, and the freshmen didn't have time to know their way. They waited until the next day when classes started, and their eyes were darkened when they saw the timetable. Where is this classroom? Where am I now? Why is it an auditorium again? Why is it so dark here? Oh, it turned out to be the basement. So there are not many people who are late, but there are definitely not many. And when the students who rushed over in a hurry saw the three standing outside eating oily pies, they couldn't help but slow down. At this time, even without looking at the uniforms of the college, you can tell which college these students belong to from the expressions on their faces. Lowen-Keluo's students tend to look surprised and switch to incomprehensible expressions, while Hufflepuff students are thoughtful, as if considering the possibility of eating a meatloaf before class. Soon, the three finished the meatloaf in their hands, and Ernie hiccuped and said, I seem to be in a hurry, and I forgot to drink something, so I can do it. He hiccuped again. I remember a magic spell that can cure hiccups, do you want to try it? Justin asked. Ernie thought for a while, and felt that it was really not good to hiccup into the greenhouse, so he nodded and said, then please. Leonard looked at the two with a blank face, without any waves in his heart. These two people are really brave, one dares to mention and the other dares to look, their hearts are really big. Aren't they afraid to rub Ernie's head off with a destructive magic trick? Oh, wait, Hufflepuff isn't an exploding ghost, and exploding spells tend to be extremely difficult. Well no, Justin took out his wand, a thoughtful look on his face. Hurry up, I feel a little uncomfortable, Ernie said. Wait, let me recall. I saw others use it in Diagon Alley, but I haven't tried it myself. As a Muggle wizard, Justin naturally couldn't have learned his magic from Gialli. Justin's words made Ernie a little uneasy. Then I'll still feel bad, let's go in. Don't worry, I figured it out. Justin pointed to Ernie's mouth, clean it up. The wand flashed a light, and the next moment Ernie stopped hiccuping, a puff of foam came out of his mouth. Woo, Ernie couldn't speak because of the foam, looked at Justin with a puzzled expression and pointed to his mouth. Ah, I don't really understand what happened. This is the first time I use this magic, and I don't know why it has this effect. Justin was at a loss. The choking person was just pointed at by this magic, and he didn't spit foam. Ernie looked scary like he was foaming at the mouth and about to burp. Leonard wiped the sweat that didn't exist on his forehead, and said to Justin, "Most magic has a concept of advanced use, that is, after using a magic skillfully, it can produce different magic effects through the output of magic power." "Is that so? Could it be that I used too much magic power?" Justin asked blankly. "No, I'm more inclined that you misremembered the spell. Cleaning up is specially used to clean up dirty things. If it is to make people breathe smoothly, it should be breathing out," Leonard guessed and read out the ancient Latin. Then he glanced at the way Ernie was spitting bubbles, turned his head and pulled the drawer shamelessly. "I can't laugh. This is my real roommate who has been with me for 7 years, I can't laugh." Ernie noticed Leonard's drawn face, and helplessly spat out bubbles and said, "Laugh if you want." "No, I have been strictly trained. No matter how funny I am, I won't laugh." Leonard froze and couldn't help laughing when he saw Ernie spit bubbles, "unless I can't help it." Leonard and Justin, the culprit, laughed, and the helpless Ernie wanted to laugh too, but he spewed out more foam. "Laugh later. What should we do now?" Ernie said helplessly. "It's very simple, just find a professor." Leonard pushed open the door of the greenhouse. "I think Dean Sprouter will have a solution." Ernie looked terrified. "Is my appearance being seen by other people soon?" "Don't care so much at this time, just blame Justin." Leonard rolled his eyes and snickered, "You blame Justinger." Ernie suddenly realized, and stared at Justin with malicious eyes. "Clean it up." Ernie took out his wand and retaliated against Justin before Justin could resist. So there was one more person who spit bubbles. Justin and Ernie looked at each other, feeling something was wrong, and then they looked at Leonard. 343 Leonard walked away quickly to distance himself, as if he didn't know the two of them. "Don't run, Leonard. Only you. Don't run." It's no wonder if he doesn't run away. Leonard can accept playing with his roommates and children to reduce unnecessary attention, but he doesn't want to sacrifice his image and pretend to be a crabman by spitting bubbles. Why do these two look like they are opening the door to a new world? Can't afford to provoke them. In the end, Justin and Ernie chased and were led to the greenhouse. In front of greenhouse number 1, they met classmates and professors who were about to start classes. Seeing two bubbling people chasing one of them afraid of running away, the students showed astonished expressions, and Professor Sprout, who had a serious face and was about to teach the students who were late, couldn't hold back. "Ha ha ha ha." The dean, with a round figure, good looks and kind eyebrows, looked at the students waiting for education and looked at each other. "What's the matter with you?" Professor Sprout finally stopped laughing and asked. "Professor." Justin saw Ernie choking and tried to help him, but he used the wrong spell. Leonard DBCA told the truth. As for Justin, he was caught laughing at Ernie back with revenge. Ernie and Justin looked distressed. "Ha ha ha, your opening performance was very interesting," which left a deep impression on everyone. Dean Sprouter took out his wand and cursed to stop immediately. The magic stopped, and Justin and Ernie stopped bubbling from their mouths. "Go in quickly and get ready for class. Since you have brought happiness to everyone, no points will be deducted this time. Don't be late next time." Professor Sprouter waved his wand, warning without any deterrent effect. "Yes, Professor Sprouter." Justin and Ernie walked into the team with Leonard dejectedly. "Okay, students, let's start the class. Today's class is very simple, mainly to familiarize you with the concept of magical plants." Professor Sprouter clapped his hands and shouted, "Everyone put on dragon leather gloves now. Remember, you are not allowed to take them off at any time, understand?" "Yes," the students replied loudly, and put on their gloves peeing. Leonard is no exception. Although the magical plants that can be blocked by dragon leather gloves basically cannot hurt him, he doesn't need to be so special. Then I will show you around our Hogwarts greenhouse and the various magical plants inside. Professor Sprout said, "Greenhouse number 1 first." Professor Sprout opened the greenhouse, revealing a dark, seemingly empty greenhouse. "Professor, there is nothing in it," a student of Lewen Keluo said. "Of course not, nothing. Here is the devil's net." Professor Sprout looked at the students. "Does anyone know the characteristics of the devil's net? This is the knowledge in your textbooks. Let me see if anyone has previewed it." Quote. The students looked at each other in blank dismay. Even Lewen Keluo, who was eager to learn, seldom read textbooks during the holidays. Even if they read textbooks, they mostly read elementary standard spells, which can learn magic. They really don't know how the devil's net is introduced in the textbook. Leonard thought for a moment, wondering if he should act. Excessive performance will attract the attention of others, which is inconsistent with the policy of muffled development. But as a student of Hufflepuff, good performance means that he will be more favored by the dean, and even make Sprouter, who is the dean, regard himself as a student similar to a mentor. Although this relationship cannot allow me to obtain dangerous magical plants or magical plant seeds from Professor Sprouter may occasionally give himself a small lesson and get to know some rare magical plants. And a good relationship means that the other party may occasionally ask him to take care of the greenhouse. If you have this opportunity, you can get close to 10 magical plants. You can get a little at the right time. Thinking about it this way, answering more questions and being more present in front of Professor Sprout will do more good than harm. Leonard nodded, and he had already thought about the pros and cons in just a dozen seconds. Interpersonal communication is all about skill and no emotion. So Leonard raised his hand. "Oh, Mr. Wilhelm." Professor Sprout saw Leonard, who raised his hand at a glance. "Tell me about it." "Okay, Professor." Leonard first showed his politeness before replying. Devil's net is a dangerous magical plant. A mature devil's net will stretch out its roots and entangle its prey, causing injury or death. They like darkness. It is damp and has a strong light-proof property. If it encounters the devil's net, it can emit flames or strong light to disperse them. Very good. Very perfect answer. Plus 10 points for Hufflepuff. Professor Sprout nodded in satisfaction. Mr. Wilhelm said a lot. The devil's net hates light, and their dark roots are as dangerous as snakes. That's why you open the greenhouse. You cannot see the devil's nets behind the door, because they are hidden. This is a magical plant that you need to know about in the first grade, the devil's net. Professor Sprout illuminated the number 1 greenhouse with a fluorescent spell, allowing the students to see the roots covered with black, the twisting devil's web. What Mr. Wilhelm said just now is very important knowledge points, and they will be tested during the final exam. Professor Sprout said as he locked the door of greenhouse number 1. The specific knowledge will be discussed in the next class. Let's see the next one. Next, Professor Sprout took the students to visit the Mandela grass in greenhouse number 2. The biting cabbage in greenhouse number 3, a magical plant called bubble pod, and the poisonous tentacles in greenhouse number 4. However, because these magical plants are not within the teaching scope of this semester, Professor Sprout just gave a rough introduction without explaining in detail or asking questions. But Leonard pays special attention to these magical plants. Mandela, a magical plant whose root system is like a crumpled little man. Its root system can make a disgusting call, and the immature Mandela can make people stunned. The sound of a mature Mandela is deadly enough. The plant that kills people through sound aroused Leonard's curiosity. At the beginning, Giggs's pharmacy sold Mandela, but it was a pre-treated medicinal material that had no activity. Leonard is a little curious. If he is facing this wonderful magical plant, is the sound that can kill him ineffective, or does the Mandela give up screaming because of its friendship with himself? This is a question worth studying, but it is a pity that Leonard has difficulty obtaining a Mandela plant. Della grass has no seeds. Like potatoes, this plant reproduces by rhizomes. Only a piece of chopped rhizome is needed to grow a complete Della grass, but the treated rhizomes of Della grass cannot be planted as seeds. This is normal, because of the lethality of Mandela grass. This thing is also a Category C prohibited commodity like the seeds of poisonous tentacles. The C category here does not refer to the level, but the category. Similar plant seeds fall into this category, and for magical animals like fire dragons that are forbidden to be kept, their eggs belong to Category B prohibited items, while some potions belong to Class A prohibition, selling goods. So, Leonard wants to plant a Mandela plant and needs to go to Midgard and see if she can get him one from Nocturne Alley. Or come to the greenhouse and steal a plant directly. Leonard looked at the Mandela buried in the flower pot with shaking branches and came up with a great idea. Are you afraid of stealing a magical plant? After all, the Gringotts have been robbed. In addition to Mandela, there is also the poisonous tentacles that Leonard is thinking about. Hogwarts is really a paradise. The magical plants that are hard to buy from the outside world gather here for students to study and research. Until the end of herbal medicine class, Leonard was still thinking about whether to go to the greenhouse to steal some plants, so he just followed Justin and Ernie, and he didn't realize it until he walked to the auditorium. "What are we doing here?" Leonard asked suspiciously. "The next class is Transfiguration, right?" The Transfiguration classroom is in the north area of the castle, and the auditorium is in the south area of the castle. Is it too much to get lost? Don't worry, there is still more than an hour before the Transfiguration class. Justin said. Yeah, it doesn't matter if we get to the classroom early, how about? Ernie said and walked into the auditorium. Let's have brunch. The atmosphere in the auditorium was quite calm, and many students sat casually on the long table to get the food they needed. Brunch is a meal to replenish energy during leisure time at work, and Hogwarts has prepared this meal very thoughtfully. In fact, this should be breakfast until now, and it seems that this posture will probably continue until lunch. And then lunch. After traveling for so long, Leonard seldom eats lunch except for the 1 month at the Leaky Cauldron, or simply eats snacks or cold sandwiches. Dinner might be richer, but Leonard is not sure, he just judges from the daily habits of the British. Yeah, how can you listen to the class seriously if you don't add some energy, etc.? I heard that Professor McGonagall, the professor of Transfiguration class, is a very serious person. She is the headmaster of Gryffindor, but she has never favored Gryffindor. Justin said. Bao inquired about it. Now that the two roommates have said so, Leonard did not refuse. They sat down at Hufflepuff's long table for a hearty brunch. Pass me that bottle of jam, Leonard, please. Ernie sat down and planned to make himself a jam sandwich. That jam looks good. I was too busy in the morning, I didn't have time to eat it, I must try it now. Leonard handed Ernie the jam at hand, and the milk he wanted for Justin, and then got himself 2 pieces of bacon and a fried egg. Not an omelette, but a veritable fried egg, a boiled and peeled egg wrapped in ground beef, then breaded and fried until golden, served with black pepper or tomato sauce. Leonard glanced at the golden fried egg on the fork, and took a bite with mixed feelings. The taste is good, but Leonard is not used to this strange way of eating eggs. If Leonard remembers correctly, this thing seems to be called Scotch fried eggs, which is the hometown of Leonard's body, but he has never eaten this stuff. It's a bit choking. Leonard swallowed the food in his mouth with difficulty and took a sip of milk. While Leonard was enjoying his breakfast, he suddenly noticed a trace of malice. It seemed that someone had a bad idea not far away. Leonard put down the cup calmly, picked up the smooth silver spoon and turned it around, as if he just wanted to play with the spoon. In fact, he has already seen the people around him through the reflection of the spoon. Soon he locked on the direction, is Slytherin's minister. Slytherins. Leonard put down the silver spoon and smiled mockingly. He was taunting himself for overreacting a bit. At first he thought Quirrell was after him and that's why he was so careful, but when he found out that it was a student of Slytherin, he suddenly felt dull. It was nothing more than a group of students, and Leonard could knock them down empty-handed. After Leonard discovered that he came out of the ruins of the Gringotts No. 12 vault, the ancient sprouts had undergone some changes, and the silver magic power reserve was more, roughly estimated to support Leonard's release of 3 ancient magics. And another seemingly insignificant change is that Leonard's body has become stronger, but in terms of strength and endurance, it is no different from adults who exercise regularly. If someone wants to attack him, he will definitely let that man know what the iron fist of justice feels like. Leonard turned his head arrogantly, looked at the Slytherin long table, and locked on Draco Malfoy, who was looking at him and plotting something with a buck-toothed boy. Noticing that Leonard was looking at this side, Draco Malfoy's expression froze, and subconsciously wanted to look away, but felt that doing so was too timid, so he boldly talked to Leonard. Look at each other. The buck-toothed boy next to him, who looked about 15 or 16 years old, stared at Leonard gloomily and slowly raised his hand to Leonard and raised his index and middle fingers. Of course he was not saying, yeah, this gesture represents provocation and contempt in the UK, and it has the same meaning as giving the middle finger. Leonard pondered for a while, then raised his head to look at Draco Malfoy. His eyes were suddenly sharp, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and the shadow cast by his slightly low forehead fell on Leonard's eyes. A broken and malicious eyes, and even the corners of the mouth are full of chilling malice. Draco Malfoy, who was sitting at the long table in Slytherin, jumped up abruptly, before sitting back down because his legs were weak. Frightening Draco Malfoy with his eyes again, Leonard turned around contentedly and continued to enjoy his breakfast. He didn't even intend to look back to appreciate Draco Malfoy's reaction. This kind of person would not back down until he suffered a loss. Even if he suffered a loss, his self-righteous pride would make him extremely distorted against himself. Needs a lesson to deal with this kind of person. It is useless to frighten them. What he needs is a lesson that will be unforgettable to the other party. But it's not enough to make him really have an accident. Although Draco Malfoy is not very useful, his father is still a bit dignified. He is one of the Hogwarts school directors. Not huge, but disgusting him a squib offspring is a breeze. This requires a little skill. Leonard's mood suddenly became very bad, biting a piece of toast viciously, his eyes were gloomy. It's really troublesome, he is obviously just a running dog of Voldemort, but he still has to look at his face carefully, it's really disgusting. Leonard never thinks he is a good person, so he will not hate or like a person just because a person is good or bad. What he hates is the kind of duplicitous people who are like weeds on the wall. Unfortunately, Lucius Malfoy is such a person, or most of the good pure blood families are actually this kind of person, the kind of person that Leonard hates the most. Seeing their long-sleeved and skillful drilling, Leonard was not happy. This displeasure gave him the urge to overthrow the so-called Malfoy family. Find a chance to make Lucius Malfoy. The territory of the werewolf wizard is not big enough. I heard that the Malfoy family has a lot of estates and manors. If they can snatch these things, the dignity of the so-called pure blood family will be like the reputation of a beautiful village widow, it can be trampled on at any time. Leonard. Just as Leonard was thinking darkly about what had ruined the Malfoy family, Harry Potter walked up to Leonard's back and patted Leonard on the shoulder. Leonard restrained his expression and showed a sunny smile. "Oh, it's Harry, what's the matter?" "I'm here to tip you off," Harry said softly. "Neville told me that he accidentally heard that Malfoy in Slytherin was looking for someone to take revenge on you, and that he found some senior students." "What? There are senior students who want to trouble Leonard?" Ernie jumped up when he heard it. Harry stared blankly at the big man with a blank expression on his face. "Who is this?" "Hello, my name is Ernie Macmillan. You can just call me Ernie. You are Harry Potter, right?" "Thank you for the tip-off. I am Leonard's roommate. Don't worry, I will definitely protect him," Ernie seriously said. "And me." Justin also jumped up. "Don't make trouble." Leonard glanced at them, smiled and said, "Sit down and eat." Obviously Leonard was all smiles, but Ernie and Justin shivered involuntarily. "Leonard, don't you need to help?" Ernie, who was frozen for a while, asked unwillingly. "No need. If you help, it will be a conflict between the two colleges, and a lot of college points will be deducted." Leonard said softly, "But if it's just me, it's not a conflict between the colleges, but a student. If there is a conflict between them, and the side with fewer people is weaker, points should not be deducted. But there are senior students, if they put you down and run away, the professors won't punish them without evidence," Justin said. "I've heard that the head of Slytherin House, the professor of the potions class will be taking this afternoon. Snape is particularly protective of their students." "Yeah, let's tell the prefect. Maybe he has a way," Ernie said. Harry also nodded approvingly and said, "Yes, it's better to ask the prefects for help." The three of them all looked worried, as if they were worried that Leonard would be bullied. "All good kids." Leonard laughed and said nothing. "Leonard, what are you thinking?" Harry thought Leonard's smile was weird. "I'm thinking I'm going to have to answer more questions in class to earn more points for the academy," Leonard said. "What time is this? Still thinking about this?" Ernie complained. "Why don't you go to the professor directly?" "No, you'll know why when the time comes." Leonard continued to eat as he spoke, as if he didn't want to say more. Harry walked away preoccupied, not knowing what he was thinking, while Justin and Nini gathered together and whispered as if they were discussing something. The whole meal was full of ups and downs, but Leonard still had a good appetite, and he probably ate his lunch. 30 minutes later, Leonard, who was full of food and drink, and Justin and Ernie, who were full of thoughts, hurried to the Transfiguration classroom. The Transfiguration classroom is located on the first floor of the castle, but that doesn't mean it's easy to find. At least the three of them passed through the side door of the auditorium and arrived at the main hall of the castle, only seeing the marble stairs leading to the second floor. Fortunately, after observing carefully, Leonard found an inconspicuous door at the corner of the stairs. Behind this door was the corridor leading to the classroom at the back of the castle. The three rushed to the classroom. At this time, there were still many students who had not arrived, so they found a seat and sat down to wait for class. Leonard took out the textbook, Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, and read it again. The transformation charm is the only magic that Leonard has not learned in all the textbooks, because there are no detailed gestures and spells about this magic in the textbooks. Leonard read this textbook when he was thinking about werewolves, because he always felt that the Transfiguration League and werewolves had a certain connection. But this book is really too simple. Most of the content is to record the adverse consequences caused by the abuse of the Transfiguration Curse. It is not so much a textbook on the Transfiguration Curse as it is a collection of death. Most of them are wizards who become monsters and cannot return or unwilling to change back. For example, the book describes a monster called a five-legged monster, which is a monster with a round body, 5 deformed legs and red hair all over its body. It is said that they were originally wizards, but they were turned into monsters by humans. Perhaps this is the reason why they like to eat people and are very dangerous monsters. Transformation. Maliciousness towards humans, no matter how you look at it, has many similarities with werewolves. There must be some kind of connection here. After Leonard finished the introduction of the five-legged monster again, the door of the classroom was slowly pushed open amidst the noise of the students. For a moment, the classroom became quiet, which made Leonard feel familiar. When he was in school in the previous life, it was the scene when the class teacher entered the door. The eyes of the students focused on the opened door, but it was not the serious head Gryffindor who appeared in front of them, but an orange tabby cat. Tabby cat. Leonard stared at the cat strangely. As a time traveler familiar with the plot, Leonard certainly knew that the tabby cat that broke into the classroom was the professor of Transfiguration Curse, the head of Gryffindor, and the vice principal of Hogwarts, Minerva McGonagall. She is a registered animagus wizard. Animagus means a wizard who can turn into an animal. These wizards are generally good at a large category of magic, transfiguration spells. While watching the movie, the older cat lady was transformed into a cat while teaching Gryffindor and Slytherin and sat on the podium waiting for the late Savior and Ron Weasley. There is nothing wrong with the plot, but Leonard is a little curious. Could it be that it is comfortable to be a cat? Why does this serious 31-year-old professor look so skilled? Leonard, who was already very interested in the transformation curse, thought about it. Will the five-legged monster be unwilling to transform back into a human being? It's just that unlike the original animagus, the five-legged monster is an abnormal transformation, so the adverse effect is more serious. What about the werewolf? Could it be a consequence of the lighter transformation compared to the five-legged monster? This question can't be answered by just thinking about it, and more research and proof are needed. Leonard ruffled his hair and gave up thinking. The students who didn't know the truth looked suspiciously at this elegant tabby cat walking towards the podium, jumped up nimbly, and scanned every student's face with sharp eyes. After confirming that no one was late, Mau Mau jumped and turned into an elderly witch with gray hair and serious face in the air. Her expressionless face seemed to be wearing a mask, and her sharp eyes were like a needle that could pierce all eyes. Compared with the amiable Professor Sprout, this Professor McGonagall's behavior is strict, and he is very strict with the students. Under the surprised eyes of the students, Minerva McGonagall nodded and said, "Very well, no one is late." She paced in front of the podium and said, "I am your Professor of Transfiguration, Minerva McGonagall. You can call me Professor McGonagall. Before the class, I need to emphasize to you that." Professor McGonagall's expression became more serious, making people a little worried that she was angry. Transfiguration is a very dangerous magic. It is the most dangerous and complicated magic that you can come into contact with in your studies at Hogwarts, so I absolutely do not allow anyone to make mischief in my class, otherwise I will ask him out. Never take this class. Professor McGonagall gave a stern warning. Then she paused, looked at the students and continued, "There is a taboo in the Transfiguration Curse, that is, you are not allowed to use the Transfiguration Curse on yourself. Does anyone know why?" Leonard raised his hand without hesitation. The Professor of Transfiguration is also someone he needs to make friends with. Not to mention that Hogwarts seems to have some particularly strange traditions, that is, all principals will become professors of transfiguration spells before becoming principals, and concurrently serve as vice principals. That's how Dumbledore came up back then, and so did Minerva McGonagall. It's never a bad thing to find ways to build a good relationship with a future principal. In addition, the Transfiguration Curse is the most likely magic to undo the curse of the werewolf. As an expert in the Transfiguration Curse, Professor McGonagall obviously knows a lot of high-end knowledge. If he can become her favorite student, it may be logical to discuss the issue of werewolves. Professor McGonagall glanced at Leonard, who was the only one who raised his hand, and nodded. "Mr. Wilhelm, please answer." Leonard stood up and said, "Because people affected by the Transfiguration spell will fundamentally become another species, which will change people's thinking, and even make them unwilling to change back to humans. The five-legged monster introduced in the book is in this situation. Born next." "Very well, I can see that you have prepared well." Professor McGonagall waved Leonard to sit down and continued. The Transformation Curse does not refer to the Transformation Curse alone, but a series of advanced magics based on the Transformation Curse. As long as you master this kind of magic proficiently, you can get a good job. So, does anyone know what kind of magic is in the Transfiguration spell system? Professor McGonagall asked again. Leonard raised his hand again. Justin and Ernie looked weird because they remembered what Leonard said in the auditorium. He said he wanted to earn more points, but why? The random Hufflepuff doesn't care about college points. It's not that bad, it just doesn't feel that important. It seems that Mr. Wilhelm is very serious in the preview. You can continue to answer. Professor McGonagall saw Leonard's raised hand, paused for a moment, and his expression was a little loose. This is a student of Hufflepuff, right? This kind of eagerness to learn should go to Wenkeluo, right? The Sorting Hat got it wrong. No, judging from the situation at the time, it was clearly the kid who chose Hufflepuff himself. Leonard stood up and continued. Transformation spells include transfiguration, restoration, transformation, disappearance, summoning, conversion, live, and animagus transfiguration. Listed one by one, there are quite a lot of magic under the classification of Transformation Curse, and each one is not simple. Animagus will not talk about it. The most amazing transformation magic, activation spell, can make stone statues or other things active. Conversion spell can turn one thing into another thing. Summoning spell can conjure something out of thin air. The vanishing charm is the opposite of the summoning charm. Changing spells are generally used on newspapers, which can make changes in the original to make other newspapers that have been cast with changing spells change at the same time. It can be said that the magic of the Transformation spell series has a very wide influence in the wizarding world, and the masters who have mastered and proficient in the Transformation spell have high achievements. It's no wonder that every Transfiguration professor will become the headmaster. Very good, plus 20 points for Hufflepuff. Professor McGonagall nodded approvingly. Then let's talk about the precautions for the Transfiguration spell and the most important GAMP's Transfiguration law. A Transfiguration lesson ended quickly, and at the end of the class, Professor McGonagall taught the Transfiguration spells and gestures, and then distributed each student a match, asking them to turn Miji into a king. This is your homework. I will check it before the next class starts. If someone can't do it, then I will ask him to be locked up. Before get out of class ended, Professor McGonagall gave another stern warning. After the Transfiguration class was over, the students, who were overwhelmed by Professor McGonagall's momentum, breathed a sigh of relief. Leonard, Ernie and I are going to the auditorium. Are you going? Justin asked. Still going to the auditorium. Leonard was stunned and wanted to check his pocket watch. Oh, it's past 11 o'clock, and it's time to have lunch. Didn't you just come from the auditorium before class? I won't go, I'll go back and take care of my plants, Leonard said. He also kept a plant of fortified white fresh and a malnourished biting kale in the dormitory. Is it okay, Leonard? I don't think you should act alone these days. Those Slytherins might sneak up on you. Empress Dowager said. It's okay, it's not too far from here to the common room, so don't worry about me. Leonard said casually. In fact, he wished that the group of Slytherins would quickly come over and trouble him, otherwise it would be inconvenient for him to be stared at by such a group of brats. Leonard touched the ancient sprout that was resting in his sleeve. Hogwarts is a mysterious place. Leonard once opened his magic vision here, and found that the whole castle was filled with magic. And in this magical color, there are a lot of silver traces of ancient magic. Hogwarts Castle is related to ancient magic, which is very likely. After all, Hogwarts has a history of hundreds of years. Under the castle, there are mysterious relics of ancient magic, so it is not surprising that this castle is related to ancient magic. Leonard recently planned to find the specific location of another ancient magic relic, and it would be very troublesome if someone kept paying attention to him. Then you must be careful yourself, don't go to remote places. Justin said a word of concern, and then left with Huchi talking and laughing. Leonard watched the two leave, and silently put away the textbooks. Justin and Ernie's relationship became very good, largely due to the camaraderie they developed while spitting bubbles together before herbalism class. For children of this age, making a fool of themselves together can increase the distance between each other, but if one person stays out of the process of making a fool of each other, it is easy to create a gap. If Leonard hadn't run away and was spitting bubbles like these two kids, there is no doubt that the three of them would have developed a solid friendship with each other. But that's not necessary. Leonard's mental age is not a real child after all. It's fine to make jokes every day. If he really wants to save face and make a fool of himself and make friends with others, it's fine. At least he felt that no one had the qualifications for him to put down his dignity and make friends. Children need friends because they need friendship and approval in the process of growing up. Leonard belongs to the overdue child, and his psychology is basically perfect, so he doesn't need such naive heart-to-heart friends. In contrast, he needs an ally who can stand on his own or fight side by side with Leonard, and someone like Midgard would be good. After packing up his textbooks, Leonard left the classroom and walked towards the stairs, thinking about homework problems while walking. The homework in the Transfiguration class was nothing. After learning to control the output magic power of the wand, Leonard was already very proficient in controlling the magic power. Learning new magic is not difficult. The homework for the herbalism class was cumbersome, requiring a paper about 2 feet long on the devil's web on fixed-size parchment. On the word, text, was spoken by Professor Sprout himself, and so was the length of the 2 feet. Leonard doesn't quite understand what a magical unit of measurement this 2 feet is. If someone writes larger, can they write less, and if they write smaller, they have to write more. The sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor, and there were quite a few people encountered along the way, among which students from Slytherin and Hufflepuff were more common. That's normal. After all, this corridor leads to the stairs to the basement, where the common rooms of the Slytherin and Hufflepuff houses are located. Leonard lowered his eyes, thinking about how to write this so-called herbal medicine class paper, while his ears paid attention to the movement behind him. Someone was following him. Judging from the sound of footsteps, there were probably 5 to 6 people. Although the footsteps were suspiciously slow but not specially trained, the footsteps were as clear in Leonard's ears as the day of thunder. Finally came. Leonard breathed a sigh of relief, so that it would not affect his plan to find ancient ruins in the castle. As for the boys who brought him good news, Leonard will naturally give them the reward they deserve. Soon, Leonard arrived at the landing. Coincidentally, there was no one there. As if feeling that this place is very suitable for hands-on, the footsteps behind him are no longer hidden, and they hurriedly chased after them. Several figures ran past Leonard, and it took Leonard a lot of effort not to knock them down as they ran past him. There are flaws all over. Leonard glanced at the people standing in front of him. It was Delica Malford and his 2 followers. And behind him came the sound of unhurried footsteps. "Are you Leonard? I heard you are very arrogant." A voice that is in the period of voice change, like the voice of a drake, sounded. Leonard turned his head and saw the buck-toothed man who said, "Yeah," to himself in the auditorium. He was wearing a Slytherin uniform with black and green trim, his face was full of arrogance, and he was also followed by 2 followers. His expressions and lines made Leonard feel like he was in a drama, and he thought he was in a domestic school drama in a trance. The lines are very old-fashioned, and even this arrogant expression is quite old-fashioned. "You caused our young Master Malfoy to lose face when he just entered school. How now we hope you can apologize to him." Sui Yanan said, "This will save you a little bit of suffering." Leonard, who originally wanted to see the difference in the campus bullying at Hogwarts, suddenly lost interest. If the other party can play some new tricks, it is not impossible for Leonard to cooperate and tease them. The result is still the same. Verbal threats, and violent threats are probably different from this violence. Muggles use fists, and wizards use magic. But Leonard thought it would be good for these young wizards to know what real violence is. Marcus, what are you talking about with him? I want him to pay for his disrespect for the name Malfoy. Draco Malfoy shouted. Okay. The buck-toothed man called Marcus smiled evilly, raised his wand and pointed at Leonard, then let me teach you a lesson. Let me teach you a lesson. Marcus said with a smug smile, the front teeth are a big stick. A beginner-level curse that can make people's front teeth grow longer. It is a very insulting magic with low attack power. Leonard looked at the magic shot towards his face, without any fluctuations in his heart, and even had time to think about the effect of this magic. In the eyes of others, this reaction meant that they had been scared to death, and the 6 Slytherin students present couldn't wait to see Leonard make a fool of themselves. Especially Draco Malfoy, who was scared twice by Leonard, now has a hideous face, wishing that everyone in the school could see Leonard, whose front teeth had grown to the top of his feet, panicked. Unfortunately, his wish was doomed to fail. Leonard turned his body slightly, watching the clear magic fly past him and then precisely hit Draco Malfoy, who had a grim face and wanted to have fun. The impact of the magic made Malfoy take a few steps back involuntarily. Before he could react, his front teeth bulged like gold, cutting his lips and making his mouth bloody. Malfoy yelled on the spot, his face turned pale, and his eyes quickly filled with tears. Malfoy. Marcus was stunned, looking at the bloody, screaming Malfoy, who was a little overwhelmed. Just as he was wondering if he should help dispel the magic, he saw Leonard walking towards him come over. Do you like to use this magic on others because you have a pair of disgusting buck teeth? Leonard walked towards Marcus step by step with a smile on his face. That smile, obviously full of smiles, but Leonard's cold gaze made Marcus shudder. No wonder Malfoy was scared to cry. This is what Marcus subconsciously thought. You don't come here. He stammered, retreated involuntarily, and said to the 2 followers behind him, you 2, come on. The 2 followers behind him also panicked, and they took up their wands and cast a curse at Leonard. Stupid. A stun spell was cast and shot towards Leonard, but unfortunately the hand-shaking magic of the servant was totally missed. The stunning spell missed Leonard, and then hit Malfoy's follower, Goyle, precisely. Hearing the screams coming from behind, Leonard paused, and looked back at Gore, who was knocked down to the ground, his head full of question marks. What level of magic is it, just this accurate? Whack my allies and protect my enemies. Leonard turned his head, completely losing interest in this group of people. He walked over to Marcus, interrupting to end the farce. Marcus was furious, looking at the wand in his hand aimed at Leonard and passed out. The hand, which had always been slender and thinner than Marcus's, grasped the wand with a light tug, and took the wand away from Marcus's hand. Marcus was stunned, glanced at the empty hand, and then at Leonard, with great confusion in his small eyes. What is this to dismiss? The coach doesn't talk about martial arts. The corners of Leonard's mouth raised, and he said softly, I've been sick of your buck teeth for a long time. What? Marcus answered subconsciously, and the next moment a thin-looking fist hit his face. Puff. Blood mixed with saliva flew up along with the front teeth, and Marcus's body flew into the air, his eyes glazed over. That doesn't make sense. That's not what wizards do. Marcus roared in his heart for a full 10 seconds, and then Enshong passed out to the doctor. The attendants behind Marcus looked at the blood and front teeth in the air, their brains went blank, and when they saw Marcus, who was unconscious after landing, they subconsciously shouted, but each of them punched the old man, making them step up immediately following in the footsteps of Marcus. After cleaning up the 3 senior cannon fodder, Leonard bent down, wiped the blood from his hands on Marcus's uniform, and looked at Marcus, who had tears streaming down his face and a ferocious face. Dislike. Leonard wiped his hands vigorously with a disgusted DBCC expression, then stood up, looking at the Malfoy trio behind him. At this time, the 3 of them were not in good condition. Gore was knocked down by a good teammate with a stun spell, and Draco Malfoy couldn't close her mouth, and her saliva dripped down her 1-meter-long front teeth, like a fool. Crabbe, the only one unscathed, ran around Malfoy and Goyle like a headless fly, nearly knocking Malfoy to the ground. If it weren't for the front teeth that made Malfoy speechless, Malfoy would definitely let Crabbe know what it means to be irritable at this time. It's time for the farce to end. Leonard squeezed his fists, and the joints made a burst of noise, and the ancient shoots invisible to others came out to join in the fun, waving his curled-up leaves like a boxer. Malfoy's face turned pale in an instant. He had witnessed the miserable situation of Marcus and his followers, and he wanted to run away in a panic. At this moment, a figure shrouded in a black robe slowly walked up the stairs, with greasy and messy hair, and the smell of strange potions all over his body. He attracted everyone's attention as soon as he appeared. Professor Snape! Malfoy yelled indistinctly, and ran towards Snape as if seeing a savior. After being dispelled by Snape, he shouted, "This man bullies us." Snape frowned, looked at Malfoy with long front teeth, Royal who was unconscious, and Marcus and his followers not far away who were covered in blood. The expression on his face became gloomy. He was about to start an attack, but he didn't expect that student from Hufflepuff to walk up to him. "Sorry, Professor," Leonard said politely. "I hurt these classmates, I'm sorry." With absolute craftsmanship, Leonard admitted his mistake without hesitation. Snape's expression softened a little, but it was still scary. "You're Hufflepuff's student, aren't you? What's your name?" Snape said slowly, thinking about how many points he would deduct from this student. "My name is Leonard Wilhelm, I'm sorry I couldn't help it." Leonard showed a tame expression under Malfoy's expression, "But I really can't help it, they keep calling me Mudblood." Leonard looked distressed. "I can feel their malice, so I couldn't help but hurt them, but I don't quite understand what the Mudbloods mean." Snape's face darkened immediately, and Malfoy thought he had a backer, and said without hesitation, "The Mudblood is talking about you, you Muggle-born Mudblood. Jump repeatedly across the line of fire. Mr. Malfoy." Snape's voice sounded calm but with a hint of tremor. "Professor." Malfoy looked at Snape blankly, and suddenly found that the dean's face was extremely ugly, and the terrifying eyes seemed to strangle a child to death. "And that kid seems to be him Delica Malfoy. Bullying your classmates, insulting others. All of you, a month's confinement." Snape stared at Malfoy and said flatly, "Lockdown. Why them?" Malfoy looked blank, wondering if Snape was wrong. Isn't Professor Snape the most defensive? Why would they be punished? Why, of course it's because you poke the other person's heart recklessly. Leonard lowered his head and chuckled. It's a pity that no points were deducted after all. Isn't Snape's desire to win the Academy Cup? Mr. Wilhelm. After dealing with his own people to make himself feel better, Snape looked at Leonard. "You used magic in the hallway." "Sorry, Professor, I didn't use magic. Malfoy's tooth was accidentally shot by Mr. Marcus," Leonard said, taking out his wand. "If you don't believe me, you can check it." Snape stared blankly at Leonard's wand, the familiar shape reminding him of Dumbledore's Elder Wand. But he quickly reacted and asked, "If you didn't use magic, how did Mr. Gore faint? And Mr. Marcus and the others?" Snape stared suspiciously into Leonard's eyes. Leonard looked at Snape calmly. Suddenly the ancient buds on his cuff swayed, and a silver light flashed in Leonard's eyes. "Find a reason to deduct points from this guy." Leonard seemed to hear the words from Snape's eyes. "What's the matter?" "Hear it from the eyes." Leonard froze for a moment, and suddenly noticed that Snape took a sharp breath, took a step back, and his face was full of horror. "Is this insanity?" Leonard was at a loss, and touched the ancient buds in his sleeves. It seems that Snape's instigating telekinesis was countered, and Leonard was not prepared for it by being caught off guard. What to do? It's so embarrassing. I overheard Snape's little thoughts. This guy won't wear shoes for him, will he? And Snape looked horrified at this moment. Under what circumstances? I was countered. This Hufflepuff student has learned occlumency. The two stood there awkwardly, not daring to look at each other, and they didn't know how to continue talking. Cough. Leonard coughed dryly and said, "Professor Snape, I knocked them down with my fist, because the school rules say that magic cannot be used in the corridor." Leonard generally followed the rules, unless the rules got in the way of his plans. Under normal circumstances, Leonard would never violate school rules. Snape was silent for a while and said, "So you're bullying your classmates?" "No, I was just afraid of being bullied on campus, so I subconsciously fought back after Mr. Marcus attacked me with magic," Leonard said shyly. "At this time, he is like a good student who is harmless to humans and animals, a real student of Hufflepuff." Coyness. Malfoy's eyes were burning, and he subconsciously wanted to reveal the disguise of this scary guy, but when he thought that he had offended Snape somehow, he lowered his head helplessly. Forget it, Snape probably wouldn't believe him at this time, so he shouldn't bother. Snape wasn't fascinated by Leonard's performance. He didn't believe that a student who had learned occlumency could be such a harmless good stubble. He subconsciously glanced at Leonard's eyes and avoided them unnaturally. Anyway, you hurt your classmate, Snape said. 50 points off Hufflepuff. Leonard's face turned dark. He only earned 30 cents in the morning, and the dog deducted 50 cents if he forced him. Shameless. Although I don't care about the so-called Academy Cup, it's not very irritating if my results are instantly marked as negative. Although his throat was full of curses, Leonard still smiled kindly and said goodbye to Snape. This guy, the more you talk about him, the more energetic he is. Leonard can guarantee that if he says a word more, he will lose points for contradicting the professor. He was not fooled. Seeing Leonard leaving so simply and neatly, he originally wanted to wait for Leonard to argue unconsciously, but then Snape, who contradicted the professor's point-deducting combo, was stunned again. Is it so bold? Point deduction without blinking an eye. Snape looked suspiciously at Leonard's leaving figure. A trace of suspicion flashed in his eyes. And what is the opponent's ability to counter his own insanity magic? Occlumency. No, it's not quite right, it doesn't look like it at all. Occlumency can prevent the prying of the insanity, but it is at a passive level, and only in the event of a fierce confrontation can it be possible for the insanity master to become absent-minded and then be read in reverse. But it felt to him just now that he and this Leonard released the Soul Reaper at the same time, but he failed and the other party succeeded. But what about my own occlumency? Why didn't it work? There is a problem, this student has a problem. Snape was so lost in thought that he didn't even pay much attention to his friend's son who was standing next to him. On the other side, Leonard walked slowly towards the basement with a blank expression. I was careless, I actually forgot the magic of mind-bending and looked at Snape. But it's no wonder that since he knew that the ancient sprouts could help him to be immune to all kinds of magic, he fell into a misunderstanding. The magic should be impossible to guard against, and at the same time, he naturally felt that only the unforgivable curse could threaten him. Now Snape probably knew that there was something special about him, but he still didn't know what the unknown special was. Then Snape's reaction was nothing more than to either pretend it didn't happen, but observe secretly, trying to discover the secret in himself. Or tell Dumbledore. These two do not actually conflict, and are likely to be carried out simultaneously. But he was a student after all. Dumbledore would not do anything to him, at most let those portraits hanging on the walls of the school corridor pay more attention to him. As for Snape, he was a professor and he wasn't a Slytherin, so he didn't have a chance to see him at all except when he was in potions class. No matter how much you target them, it's just to hurt yourself in potions class, or pick and choose the potions you brew, trying to make yourself burst out of your own specialness through high pressure. If he really did this, he really underestimated himself. As a scavenger in his previous life, he has long been used to hunting, and what he hunts are the smartest humans among animals and the most dangerous criminals among humans. As a special professional who hunts humans, Leonard feels that he does not lack the patience necessary for hunting. Having said that, Leonard soon discovered one thing, that is, his way to earn the advanced potion making that Snape had filled with notes was completely cut off. Now either wait until 6th grade to get it yourself, or steal it. Leonard found that he didn't learn much when he came to Hogwarts, but he had to practice his ability to steal things. He wanted to steal everything, Mandela grass, poisonous tentacles, even Snape's notes. This made Leonard, who had already disliked Snape, even more displeased. Snape wasn't the type of bad guy Leonard hated the most, but he wasn't that bad either. He was also a double dealer, the only difference being that he didn't change his position in the double dealer, not Dumbledore or Voldemort, always Lily Potter. Snape's infatuation is indeed 510, shocking, but it does not mean that he is a good person. First of all, as a person, Snape's moody personality and unconditional defensive behavior are really annoying, especially as a student from other houses. Snape is simply unreasonable. And the reason why Snape is so popular outside of the movie is nothing more than the word infatuation, which really made those crazy fans who shouted, "Sniper's teaching," come to Snape's class, and they were hit into mental illness every minute. Unless you are a fan of some kind of peculiar gameplay. Leonard is not a masochist, and he doesn't have the abnormal idea of, others abused me thousands of times, but I treat others like first love, and he will not take the good deeds of a person who is full of malice towards him as a reason to forgive him. Whoever has ill will towards him deserves to die. And Snape is actually a very thorough pureblood. He can be said to agree 100% with Voldemort's point of view, that Muggle wizards should be wiped out. Unfortunately, Leonard was the type of person to be wiped out, and the status of a squib descendant was even more hated by these pure-blood wizards than a Muggle descendant. However, Snape himself is a half-blood wizard, the same as his master Voldemort. It can be said that both of them are second devils. Snape served Voldemort loyally, and even eavesdropped on the prophecy about Voldemort's death, and told Voldemort the prophecy. As a result, after learning that the person who killed Voldemort in the prophecy was likely to be Lily Potter's son, he turned around and contacted Dumbledore as a double agent. It can be said that if this savior is not Harry Potter, but another possible Neville Longbottom, it is really hard to say who will win and who will lose in the future defense of Hogwarts. Snape's infatuation is like the only white spot in the pure black ink. The role of this white spot can sublimate this character, but it can't change the essence of this person. At the end of his life, Leonard can send him a flower as a blessing with grief, lamenting what a great contribution this infatuated professor has made, but when he is alive, Leonard will definitely do his best. The malicious curse this guy, hurry to hell. Leonard returned to the dormitory with a blank expression, unpacked the 2 potted plants wrapped in black cloth, and placed them on the terrace where the sun could shine. The inactive white fresh swayed in the wind, while the light-colored, particularly thin biting cabbage squirmed in the flower pot, feeling the warm sunshine. After watering the plants, Leonard lay down on the bed and began to catch up on sleep. It was not until the afternoon, at 41, that Leonard woke up and got up from the bed. Potions class in the afternoon. There is only one class, Snape's class. Leonard was ready to be made difficult. Leonard rubbed his face, took the cauldron and clean medicine bottle, and left the dormitory. In the Hufflepuff common room, many students gathered together to discuss something excitedly. After seeing Leonard appearing, each of them seemed to be pumped up, and even applauded as if they were welcoming a hero. Justin and Ernie ran over directly. "Leonard, I heard you gave those Slytherins a hard time." Ernie said excitedly. "How did you do it?" "Actually, it's not that difficult, just use your fists." Leonard said casually. "Let's go. Go to class. This class is Snape's class, the Dean of Slytherin." "Don't worry, tell everyone how you did it." Justin said excitedly. "I heard that 6 people surrounded you." "It's 6 people." Leonard recalled the Slytherins for a moment and said in silence, "None of them can fight." "That sounds so cool." Justin almost jumped up. The other Hufflepuff students around also looked at Leonard curiously. "Aren't you hurt?" asked Susan Burns, the round-faced girl. "No, they're really proud," Leonard replied. "Vegetable. Meaning they're rookies who can't even hold a wand steady," Leonard said. "It's not as bad as you said. The guy in charge is called Marcus. He's not bad at magic, and he's also very strong. He's a Slytherin Quidditch player. He plays dirty." A Hufflepuff male student said to the student sitting on the other side, "Right, Cedric." "Cedric, the genius wizard who died at the hands of Peter Pettigrew." Leonard looked at the student. "A boy with gentle brows and eyes. He hasn't opened yet at this time, but he looks really handsome." It seems to be the future boyfriend of the Chinese girl Zhang Chu. I don't know if it is." Leonard was a little curious about the Chinese girl who was considered very beautiful, and didn't know what she looked like. "That's right, Marcus is hard to deal with, whether it's on the court or in normal times." Cedric nodded and smiled at Leonard. "Hello, my name is Cedric D." Inside, quote, "Hello." Leonard nodded. "You said it's difficult to deal with normally." "Yeah, compared to deciding the game on the court, he often uses some insidious tricks in other places, such as ambushing and injuring the opponent's seeker before the start of the ball match." Cedric said, shrugging. "He's got me in trouble, but I'm lucky." "Then I'm just as lucky as you." "No, maybe more lucky, because I put him down." Leonard said, opening his pocket watch. 20 minutes to class. Potions. Justin, Ernie, aren't you still? The potions classroom is right next door. We're not in a hurry." Justin said. "I can't, I have to think about how to deal with that careless potions professor." Leonard said, closing his pocket watch. "I'll see you later." "See you later." Justin and Ernie waved goodbye. Be careful, don't get blocked again. Probably not for the time being, they probably don't have the guts. Leonard waved his hand and said, so what if it comes again? It's nothing more than 2 more punches. The potions classroom is located in the basement, between the Hufflepuff common room and the Slytherin common room. Leonard took the cauldron and walked all the way to the classroom, gaining a lot of attention along the way. There was surprise from the Hufflepuff students, there was hostility from the Slytherins. But no matter what kind of eyes Shendu is meaningless to Leonard, the eyes of hostility can't make him afraid, and the eyes of surprise and admiration can't make him happy either. What kind of surprises can there be in getting along with these brats? Leonard thinks that he would be more interesting to farm a troll than to teach Slytherin garbage. For a while, I really couldn't tell whether it was disgusting to fight the troll alone or teach Slytherin to be disgusting. Anyway, both of them are not pleasing after the fight. By the equation, those punks in Slytherin are equal to trolls. And Snape was the troll's equivalent of the stench. I don't know if the troll will feel wronged. Leonard thought wildly and pushed open the door of the potions classroom, randomly found a seat and sat down. There was no need to pick corners. With Snape's integrity, even if 31 deliberately hid Leonard, he would find him in front of him to pick thorns, so it would be better to sit in the front row openly. I just don't know which unlucky ghost will sit at the same table with me and become his partner. This would no doubt be on Snape's radar as well. The potion classroom is different from the common classroom. There are a total of more than a dozen long tables. Each long table is a group, and a group of 2 people will partner with each other when practicing brewing potions. As a partner, brewing a pot of potion will inevitably lead to both prosperity and loss. If your partner is influenced by the professor, you will inevitably be affected to some extent. Are you with Lowen Keluo again? Leonard glanced at the students Lowen Keluo, who had already been seated by many people, and touched his chin. These Law and Klaus looked at him very strangely, and they probably heard the news about Leonard beating Slytherin violently. Many people deliberately avoid themselves. The clever Lowen Keluo probably already knew that Leonard was about to be targeted, and this was an emergency avoidance. Leonard was silent for a moment, and Justin estimated that he would be with Ernie. Even if they wanted to find him, he would reject them. There was no need to drag them to suffer. After all, I didn't plan to treat them as 2 close friends, and a fox friend should look like a fox friend. But grouping is inevitable. The number of students enrolled by the 2 colleges this year is the same, there is no one more person. So the lottery. Whoever was unlucky to be the last one had to form a hard-suffering duo with himself, a student who was bound to be retaliated by head Slytherin. Leonard didn't mind, and just observed 2 seconds of silence for his partner who was about to suffer. Although there is a little guilt in my heart, Leonard can't help it, can't he? You can't kill Snape, can you? Dumbledore certainly won't allow it. Dumbledore is a respectable person. Whether he is a good person or not, he must admit that Dumbledore who insists on himself is a great wizard. The main reason is that Leonard suspects that he can't beat Dumbledore, and the opponent's operation magic seems to be a bit superb. At least when watching the Fantastic Beasts and Where series of movies, he and Grindelwald's magic duel is really clear. Even with all his plants and ancient magic, Leonard is no match for Dumbledore at this time. Since you are not the opponent of the other party, you must respect the rules of the other party, otherwise it will be very miserable. Leonard flipped through the potions textbook while thinking, intending to consolidate his knowledge. Since you can't score points in Snape's hands, make sure you try not to deduct points as much as possible. Just when Leonard saw the introduction of Water of Life and Death, Leonard felt someone approaching him, raised his head, and found that it was a girl who was not white. I have to admit that the other party's facial features are very delicate, and she is a very beautiful little girl with deep eyebrows. The skin is not the color of Caucasian, it should be Asian. Leonard thought for a while and roughly understood the identity of the other party. It should be a girl of Indian descent, one of the Patil sisters. This should be Padma Patil of Lowen Keluo. I can only say that Padma Patil in reality is much whiter than the one in the movie, and she looks better. As for the figure, an 11-year-old kid has a fart figure, isn't it all flat? Leonard's pectoral muscles are more prominent than the other. You are Wilhelm. The girl blinked playfully. I'm Padma Patil, nice to meet you. As she spoke, she put down the textbook and the cauldron in her hands. Since the other party is a good-looking girl, Leonard didn't choke the other party with nonsensical questions like, "How happy I am." "Hello, Pottle." Leonard nodded and glanced at the way the other party put down the textbook. "What is this?" "I'm going to be in a group with you. Also, just call me Padma." Padma smiled. "Aren't you welcome?" "It's not that I'm not welcome, but you should have heard about me, right?" Leonard asked. "I heard that you are very powerful." Padma looked at Leonard with admiring eyes. "I heard that you defeated 6 Slytherin students by yourself." "Just some small roles," Leonard said. "It is said to be a small role, but it is actually a bit troublesome. It may be that the study pressure at Hogwarts is too small, which makes people feel free to find trouble." On the way to potions class, Leonard felt Della's dark gaze. It seems that has not learned enough lessons, probably because he has suffered less flesh and blood. But wouldn't it be troublesome if it was ruthless? Midgard probably hasn't had the chance to storm the Malfoy family estate recently. It's not okay to do it quietly. The strength is definitely no problem, but the consequences are not something Midgard can bear, and the Ministry of Magic will not let them go. Leonard can't harm the werewolf wizards because of his own selfish desires. But what if you can't hold your breath? Leonard briefly thought about it and had an idea. He's a squib offspring who certainly doesn't have the background to go head-to-head with the Malfoys, but someone can. That was Dumbledore's backing, Harry Potter, the savior who would never be fired no matter how he got into trouble. It is only necessary to stir up the contradiction they only saw, and then make this contradiction more and more unmanageable, and it will be fine. As for how to cause this conflict, Leonard felt that the difficulty should not be too great, as long as Draco Malfoy's narrow-minded virtue just divert his sight a little bit. Being hurt by Harry Potter, even if Harry Potter accidentally mutilated Draco Malfoy, it doesn't matter. Anyway, magical magic will cure disabilities, and the dignified Malfoy family will not fail to produce this healing potion. But when I think about it this way, I feel so unwilling. Without a deep enough lesson, this kind of second generation who has nothing to do will still make trouble for themselves. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.